Good afternoon. My name is Andrea Curtin, and I am the Administrative Assistant to Talia Longhurst here in Career and Technical Education. And for the first time ever, we've decided to have this little training for support staff out in the districts and LEAs that will help us. No, I'm trying to hide behind our we're number one. And we want to thank all of our support that are here today with us in studio and all of you out there on WebEx. If you are joining us on WebEx today, if you will, in the chat box, enter your first and last name and your district or LEA that you work at, then we can kind of keep track of who is joining us today. I wanted to first introduce the other executive support staff here at the State Office of Education, or State Board of Education. Oh, I went back to my old, I did a slip there. And so I first want to introduce Tracy Silcott. She's going to help run our chat window in WebEx. Can you, no, you have to come up here and be on camera.
Be on camera.
Now you feel our pain.
Yeah. So,
hi.
So say hi and just tell them who you support.
I'm Tracy Silcott, and I support this coordinator here who likes her better than me. And then I also support two specialists. I support the Skilled and Technical Sciences specialist, Erin Bodell, and the Work-Based Learning, GFL, other things, specialist, Travis Cook.
And I'd also like to introduce our other executive support staff, Carrie Pack. So come on up, Carrie.
Hi, let's hear it, Ashley. Woo! There you go. Well, I thought about it, and then Tracy would be like, well, yeah, good for me.
That's okay. I've already been dissed once today, so we're good.
Third time's a charm.
I'm Carrie Pack. I support Wendy Morton, who will be down. She's over funding, and I support two specialists, IT and business and marketing. So it's kind of a big deal.
I'm sorry.
Well, we want to welcome you, and for joining us, and hope that we can give you some information that will help make your jobs a little easier out in the districts. And I'm going to turn the time over to Talia Longhurst, the CTE director here at the state.
Welcome. Thank you all for being here. It's nice to have a live studio audience that will laugh at my sad little jokes. I hope all of the rest of you out there will laugh quietly in your offices as well. So I wanted to just first of all start by sharing my thanks and appreciation to Andrea and Tracy, and to, gosh, I can't call you by the right name now, to Carrie. We have a new name for her, to Carrie. So Andrea, Tracy, Carrie, for putting this on, putting it together. It's a lot of work that they've gone to, and we really appreciate it. I think this is going to be a great day for everyone. What Andrea asked me to start with, and feel free for our live audience to pipe in with questions or anything that you want to know a little bit more about. I'm just going to kind of go through the agenda. What Andrea asked me to start with is just to talk a little bit about the structure of career and technical education and how it all fits together. And I'm actually even going to take it one step farther back. It just occurred to me I should have put this, I have a slide actually I could have stuck right in here, but it just occurred to me as I was sitting here. If you look at the federal level, there's a lot that goes into career and technical education and education as a whole from the federal level, and so I'm going to start at that level. So pause and let me tell you a little story. In my education career, I come from Salt Lake City School District. That's where I spent my time as a high school teacher and doing some other odds and ends working there for many years. And I always used to think, as I was writing Perkins plans from a local level, I would always think to myself, gosh, those state office people, they're just crazy. They make all these rules and they spend all their nights thinking about ways to make my life miserable, and they're horrible people. Well, then I came to the State Office of Education, back then State Board of Education now. And now having to work at this level, I think, oh, those darn federal people, they make my life miserable. And they make all these rules and they don't really understand how it works. And then you work on a national level, and there's always someone to blame. So let's start at the top and figure out who to blame for all of this stuff that we have to do. So really it is at a national level. a federal level. So you all know that there's a federal Department of Education. And currently, although there is some discussion just in the last couple of weeks that they might dissolve this whole structure as it exists today. But here's what it is today and what it has been for the last many years. Under the Federal Department of Education, there is an office called the Office of Career, Technical, and Adult Education, OCTAE, OCTAE is what we call it them. That is the office that really works with all of our programs as well as the adult ed programs. So we have a great working relationship with the folks there. The director there is Sharon Miller. She's a wonderful person. We have a whole staff of people that we work with, from our regional representatives that we work with to their finance people to all kinds of different folks who really, that we go to ask questions when you all and your directors ask questions of us. And so there's always multiple levels. As I mentioned, alluded to, there is some movement nationally through the Department of Education to perhaps streamline, those were air quotes right there, their work and maybe dissolve that and have it function differently. I hope they don't. We have a really great working relationship with all of those folks, and they've been very, very useful to have around and have in that office. So hopefully we won't see that change very much. But from there, then it comes down to a state level. And whenever I go to a national meeting, I always come back amazed that there are really 50 different ways of doing the same thing. Every state does things so differently from one another. And I'll always come back, I always listen and I think, oh, that's kind of cool, that's kind of cool. I like how they do that, maybe take that and tweak it a little bit. But then I come back and I think, gosh, I'm really glad I have my own problems and not everybody else's problems, because it's hard no matter how you do it. And the way that Utah does it is how we do it, and there's always room to improve and to do things differently. But I do think we have a really good system here, and happy to be part of it. So at the state level, I think you guys all know this, and with the legislative session ending late last night, there was rumor and a bill to maybe change the structure of our office and who governed education and how that all worked, if you were paying attention to the legislative session, which I encourage you not to do, by the way. Just wait till the very end and see what happens. I used to be able to do that, not much anymore. But for now and for the foreseeable future, we have a state board of education, 15-member committee group board that is elected by the people. And each of those 15 people represent a district in the state of Utah. And so I'm going to talk about this a little bit later when we get to advocacy. But if you don't know who your own personal state board representative is, I encourage you to go figure that out and make sure that you're in touch with them just personally, as well as the advocacy piece that we'll talk about later. But you should know who those people are. You should, from a personal just for personal information, if you have kids or grandkids in the schools, be able to talk to them about what your desires and your wants and your wishes are. I firmly believe, after seeing it on this side, not just as a citizen but as a governmental employee, that more people need to be involved in the politics of how we run our state and our country. It's very, very, very important. And when you see how it actually works, it's both exciting and sad at the same time, because so few people actually participate in the process. But we do have that elected 15-member board that represents the state of Utah. We have our governor, we have our state legislature, both the Senate and the House, and they all, in some form or another, sometimes more than they should, in my humble opinion, have their fingers in education and help determine what we do and how things work. We also have a state superintendent of education, and she really is in charge of K-12 education here in our office, and the board hires her. So she is appointed by the State Board of Education. I don't think right now she has to be approved by anybody else, if recollection serves. I think she's simply appointed by the board. There were some amendments last night going around that maybe the Senate would get to appoint her or have approval, maybe the governor, all kinds of different things. And I'm just thinking right this second about how many superintendents I've worked for since I've been at the office. This is my 13th year here at the State Board of Education. And I want to say I've been through at least 5, maybe 6 superintendents in my time. It is probably one of the most difficult jobs I've ever observed and watched someone have to do. It's a very, very difficult, political, highly charged your time is not your own kind of a job, and I have a great deal of respect for people who take that on willingly and really try hard to do good things for the students of Utah. But right now, Sydney Dixon is our current superintendent. Dr. Dixon's a wonderful person to work with. We love having her here. And then for the structure, if you look at the chart that's up on the screen right now, so Superintendent Dixon is right at the top underneath the State Board of Education. She has various folks that work with her. We have an internal audit group that is kind of out doing what they've been charged to do. We also, under the State Board of Education, have the schools, Utah Schools for the Deaf and Blind, fall under the oversight of the State Board of Education. But then from there are some deputy superintendents. We have 3 of them, if I remember correctly, 1, 2, 3. And then underneath those deputy superintendents, we have a handful of assistant superintendents. And then the assistant superintendents are really the direct link to each of the sections out in our office. And if you were to go out and wander around the building, we're divided up into little quadrants on each floor, basically. That's a slight exaggeration, but each of our little sections, we fall under an assistant superintendent. So you can see career and technical education on the far left, second one up from the bottom. We work through Darren Nielsen. If anybody out there is from Box Elder School District, we really love having him. Our apologies for stealing him away, but he's a great guy. We love having him here. So we report up through Darren to Patty Norman, who's a deputy superintendent, and then up to Dr. Dixon. So each of the sections are located somewhere on that chart. And it's actually a really great place to work. I think any of us here in the room, most days, especially on a Friday, it's a pretty decent place to work. We enjoy being here. The other thing I want to highlight before we go to the next slide, and I'll talk about CTE in just a second, but the other pieces of career and technical education in the state of Utah are our post-secondary partners, a really important link and a piece that we have in education. So what we do here in our office is K-12. Kindergarten through 12th grade, we do have some adult ed pieces. We have, here in our office, we have corrections education, the Utah State Hospital education that happens there. There are pieces that fall outside of the K-12 realm, but the majority of what we do and what we do in CTE here in our office is really focused on kindergarten through 12th grade. So outside of that, we work with USHE, Utah System of Higher Education, is what that acronym stands for. And those are the public colleges and universities. And we could go through and name all of them, but if I recall correctly, there are 8 of them. So if we start at the top, help me out, Lyra. We've got Utah State University. We've got Weber State University. We have the University of Utah, Salt Lake Community College. Now I'm going to jump around. Dixie State University. They moved up. Dixie State University. We have Southern Utah University. We have Snow College. And who am I missing? Utah Valley. I knew I was going to miss somebody. Utah Valley University. So those are the entities that are overseen by the Board of Trustees, Board of Regents at the USHE institutions. And so there's a whole group. So it would be very similar to our State Board of Education, except they're not elected. They're appointed officials, and they form the Board of Regents, and they oversee all of the higher ed colleges and universities. Okay. So then the third component, our little 3-legged stool here, is, and I'm going to call them always by the wrong name, and they've actually had a couple of names in the last 365 days, so let's see if I can get it right. Formerly known as UCAT, or Utah Colleges of Applied Technology, formerly known as the Utah System of Technical Colleges, I think officially to be known in the next few months as it goes through as UTech. Still the Utah System of Technical Colleges, but I think that's the acronym they're shooting for, is UTech. And there are 8 technical colleges here in Utah. So let's start again. Let's do Bridgerland up in Logan area. That whole corner of the state is served by Bridgerland ATCC. I'm still going to do it. Bridgerland Tech College. Then we have Ogden Weber Tech College. Then we have Davis up in Kaysville, Davis Tech College. Then we have Uinta Basin. I always kind of veer out to the right. Uinta Basin Tech College. Down in Lehigh, Spanish Fork area, we have Mountainland Technical College. Southwestern, Southwestern is in Cedar City. And then Dixie is down in Washington County, and I'm missing somebody. What am I missing? Mountain Land? I said Mountain Land.
Nebo?
Tooele, thank
Tooele.
you. Yep, Nebo is part of Mountain Land. So Tooele, poor little Tooele, I didn't mean to forget them. So Tooele Tech College is out there as well. They've got I was just out there a few weeks ago. They've got a beautiful building, a lot of space for some students, and they all do some really great things. So that's the technical college system. And between the three of us, our mission is to serve students in the areas of career and technical education. The tech colleges and the higher ed institutions, their main mission is to serve adult students, but they also have a mission to serve secondary students as well. And so we work really hard, and I'll talk about how that planning happens in a minute, but we work really hard to make sure that we work together, that we plan together, that we collaborate, and make sure that students' interests are at the heart of everything that we do. Any questions about that structure before we move on? Don't be shy.
Can you tell me the acronym for UC? I don't.
So, Utah System of Higher Education. When I moved to education full-time, I taught part-time for a long period of time and then moved over to education full-time. I swear I spent my entire first year in full-time education saying what? Because there are so many acronyms. It's absolutely incredible. So don't be afraid to say what. Okay, what we've got on the screen right now is the organization chart for our group, our Career and Technical Education group. We're up on the second floor. Always feel free to stop by. We have a really great staff. I'm honored and pleased every day to work with each one of them. I'm the director of Career and Technical Education here. I'm in my third year. It feels like my billionth year, but I think it's only my third year, maybe my fourth year, I don't know, as the director. Time goes by really quick. This is my 13th year at the office, and it does fly by really, really quickly when you're here. We have Andrea as my wonderful assistant who I couldn't live without. We have two coordinators here. Laura DeShazo is one of them, and you'll meet Wendy Morton in a few minutes. Wendy is the other one. They're wonderful to work with and have a lot of great insights and ideas as we move along. The folks on the left in the blue boxes are people that I supervise directly, and it's too small on my sheet to read, so I'm going to look at the screen to read. It's okay. So the first is Murray Mazeros. Murray's been with us in our office for many, many years. If any of you know Murray, it's probably because either you work with neglect and delinquent students, which is the other half of his job, not related to career and technical education, or he works with our civil rights reviews. So you may have met Murray as he comes out. We do 3 to 4 civil rights reviews each year, and so many of you will have a chance to meet Murray or to hear about Murray or hear from Murray as we go along. Underneath Murray, we have Shannon Fischio. Shannon is our web management specialist. She does a great job with our website. I don't know how many of you have tried to access our website in the last year. It's been an exciting time, and it's not her fault.
Yeah.
She has done a really good job getting us back up and running with all of the website changes our office has had. We also have Susan Thomas. Susan is our person who amazingly puts together all of the great resources and documents that are on our website that we'll go through and show you a little bit later. Sarah Grisenti is our current part-time temporary person. Her main duties are to assist with summer conference. She's also been filling in a lot the last year, helping with some other things, some monitoring, and she's now working a little bit with financial operations to do some things and get our grant management system up and running. And then finally on my list, we have Travis Cook. What do you say about Travis Cook? Travis Cook has worked here a really long time. He's a wonderful person. And his current job responsibilities include non-traditional education, work-based learning, and general financial literacy. Travis has worked in this office for a long time and has had a lot of different responsibilities. People still come to him every day and ask him questions about jobs that he had 3 jobs ago. He's very knowledgeable, very informed, very up to date on information. He's a great person to have. So then under Wendy, we have a lot of program area specialists and folks who work with supporting programs that we have. So Wendy works with Buddy Daimler, who's our agriculture education specialist. Brecken Haywood. Brecken is our newest employee. Is that right? Our newest, latest and greatest addition. Brecken is the specialist over business and marketing education. From there, we have Brandon Jacobson, who is Information Technology Specialist. And then Wendy also supervises Jeff McDonald, who is our Data Steward, Greg Richens, who is our CTE Skills Certification Specialist. And then working for her, as you met earlier, Carrie Pack. She also supervises Susan Loamanu, who is one of our support staff here in the office, and Camille Clark, who is another new addition to our staff. I was hoping Camille would be down here today. We should have. But she probably knows it all by heart now. She's newer. She is a compliance specialist, and she works a lot with monitoring, with requests for reimbursements, Perkins grants, all of those pieces, and many things that she may not yet know about that we'll give to her when she when she has less gray hair, probably. Working directly under Laura DeShaza, we have Rachel Bolin, who is our health science education specialist, Pearl Hart, Family and Consumer Sciences Education. Ashley Higgs. There you go. Ashley is the lively one in our group. She keeps us awake, keeps us having a
middle
good
school
time.
Students.
Yep. So Ashley works with K8 CTE is what we call her, as well as keyboarding. What else did we give you?
Digital literacy.
That's it. Digital literacy, all of those pieces. We love working with Ashley. Yeah, who doesn't? You'll love her by the end of the day. Or if you get really tired of her, we'll kick her out. Then we have Erin Bodell. Erin is also a relatively new addition. Thanks, Granite School District. Erin is our Skilled and Technical Sciences Specialist. And then finally, in terms of specialists, Doug Livingston, who is our Technology and Engineering Specialist. Ira Sanchez, one of our support staff, and Tracy Silcott work directly with Laura. So really great staff. I don't know what else to say about them. They're here for all of the LEAs whenever you need something. If you've got teachers calling and they've got questions and they don't know what to do, feel free to send them to our staff, have them call. We're happy to go out and make visits, to talk on the phone, to do whatever needs to be done to really help answer questions and make sure that people have the information and that they need. So don't be afraid to ask for help or tell your teachers or your directors to ask us. That's what we're here for. Any questions on that piece? More information than you ever wanted to know about us. Okay. All right. Let's talk about how career and technical education works across the state of Utah. So in Utah, we have 8 regions. We've divided up the state into 8 career and technical education planning regions. And these are really based around a couple of different things. They're aligned very closely with the Department of Workforce Services, DWS, sectors and regions. And I'll mention how that fits together in just a second. They're also very, very closely aligned with higher education and the technical college regions, their service regions. So it's important that the school districts and charter schools that are within those service regions for higher ed and technical college and with the workforce services departments really have the opportunity and are encouraged / required to get together and do some planning on a regular basis. And I mentioned how all 3 of us education providers, so USBE, the State Board of Education, us here, the technical college system and the higher ed system, it's really essential that we have planning regularly and that we work together and collaborate. And that's what this regional structure really promotes. And so, again, there are 8 of them. Hopefully you can find yourselves on that list somewhere. But just for naming purposes, Bear River up in the top left corner of the state, Wasatch Front North, which includes Weaver, Morgan, Davis, and Ogden school districts. Wasatch Front South is here along the Salt Lake Valley and includes Tooele as well. Mountain Land, which by number has our biggest number of school districts and charter schools. They include both of the summits, north and south. They have Park City, Wasatch, Alpine, Provo, and Nebo. So numbers-wise, they're fairly large. And then over in the Uinta Basin, Duchesne, Uinta, and Daggett, we have Central. Oh, I lied. Central numbers-wise is actually bigger. My apologies. Central is the biggest when it comes to numbers of school districts. And then you have Southeast and Southwest. So 8 planning regions. Those folks who sits in those region meetings would be the CTE directors from each of the districts and schools represented in that region, the technical college folks, the higher education folks, Department of Workforce Services folks, and anyone else that they invite in to really do planning with them. We ask them to think about things that, and occupations that are in high demand, to really focus what they're doing around those kinds of efforts. And so that connection with Department of Workforce Services is very important. Minimally, we ask them to meet at least once a month. Some meet a little less often, and that's okay too, as long as they're getting the things done that they need to have. But I've been to all of those meetings. I don't get to every single region every single year, but over the years I've been to each one of those regions more than once, and those are really good working groups where they get a lot of important things done. So you probably hear about regions. That's what we're talking about. Oh, I know what else I forgot to tell you. So those are the planning regions. From there, those regions, we utilize those regions in some other ways as well. As we talk about specific programs, we bring in one representative from each of those regions for various committees that we have. So some examples would be our consortium. We have a consortium meeting coming up in just a couple of weeks, and we ask one secondary director from each of those regions to be a representative in our consortium, so that our office, our staff goes to that meeting, and as we have things that we need, information we need to share out, ideas we want to throw out and get feedback on, have them take information back to their region meetings to share, whatever it might be. It's our opportunity and their opportunity to kind of work together in a more close fashion to really get some information out there, get some ideas, get some feedback, decide how we want to proceed. So that's one kind of committee that we have. The second one would be our Skills Cert Advisory Committee, our Skills Certification Program. I'm guessing somebody's going to talk about that. Wendy will talk about that a little bit later. But we do have one representative, again, secondary, because this is a secondary program, who comes to a statewide advisory committee for our Skills Cert program. We usually have those twice a year, and then they can meet virtually or by email if there are any other needs. And then finally, our career and technical student organizations, which we'll talk about in a couple of minutes. We have an advisory committee there. Again, a secondary member of the regions are asked to come in twice a year and to meet and talk about career and technical student organizations. We bring in each of the state advisors for those organizations, and in very productive meetings, again, trying to get ideas, feedback, and help guide the direction of those programs as we move forward. All right, anything about the regions and committee structure? Okay. Let's talk about advocacy. This is your big moment to shine. CTE, you already know it's I think you're recording. Wow.
Yeah, Gary's recording.
There'll be a little something extra in your check next week. All right. I'm a firm believer in advocacy. Being able to talk about what career and technical education is, what we do, how it benefits students is really, really, really important at every single level. I hear so many people talking about things related to career and technical education, and sometimes we don't even realize that we're advocating, and sometimes we let opportunities to advocate slip right by. I'll give you two examples. Sometimes we're in the news and they talk about career and technical education, and the information they're sharing is not necessarily accurate. Other times they're talking about career and technical education and they're using the wrong terms. Just this week I got an article sent to me, a national article. I don't even know who it was, just spam email, but sometimes I'll open things up and look at them just to see what the topic is and what they're really trying to share. And the whole article was about vocational education, and it was written this week. Vocational education is a term from 30, 50, 70, 100 years ago. And so to have people, especially the media, still talking about it always irritates me and adds some gray hair to my mostly covered gray that is taking over my hair. Being able to advocate and use current terminology and really talk about today's career and technical education. I had to answer some questions just this week, and somebody asked me how I felt about career and technical education and why it was so important. And it really is. CTE, we're in our 101st year of federally sponsored career and technical education. So I'll give a gold star to anybody. I don't have candy. It's all upstairs in my office. Not that we eat candy all the time. Oh, Andrea has a lollipop that we'll throw out to anybody. And I do mean throw, by the way. To anyone who can tell me what the first federal act, you don't get to participate, although I'm not sure if you know, maybe you do. I bet you do. The first federal act around vocational education that gave money to the states to make sure that vocational education 100 years ago, 101 now, was actually put into place. Do you know?
Who can Google it the fastest?
No.
That's the question.
I can't.
You're ineligible. Anybody know? When somebody asked me that question.
Answer on the chat.
Who's got it?
Oh, where did it go? Where'd my chat box go?
I don't see it on the chat here.
Who got it? Lisa Hilton. Where's Lisa from?
Lisa,
I don't know.
where are
We'll
you
find
from?
out. We'll find out.
Good job. She got it right. So this is for you, Lisa. We'll send one in the mail.
Send one in the mail to them.
So the answer is
The Smith-Hughes Act,
the Smith-Hughes Act.
1917.
101 years ago, federal government put into place the Smith-Hughes Act, which was all around vocational education. And at that time, there were really 3 areas in vocational education. Who can guess? What was big at that point in time, 1917? Agriculture, home economics, and shop, industrial education, right? So those were the 3 areas of CTE. Are those the only 3 areas I just went through as we went through our org chart? We've grown immensely and in all kinds of ways in those 101 years. The purpose of career and technical education is really the same as it was 101 years ago, and that is to educate students and help them be ready for the careers of the future, right? To help them be successful after they graduate from high school and move on to post-secondary education, whatever that looks like for them, graduate and go out into careers. That's the same purpose 101 years ago as it is today. How we deliver it, the programs that we offer, very, very different. We still have agriculture education. We still have, I almost said the HE word, family and consumer sciences. Home economics, much different now than it used to be. But we've added and we still have industrial arts, very different now than it used to be. We've added a whole bunch of areas. As we look across the state of Utah and across the country, and we look for what our economy needs, and it's going to be different in every region. You guys here in the room are probably from areas here along the Wasatch Front. But out there in in Eastern, Uinta Basin, their economic drivers, industry that they need workers for are going to be very different than it might be down in, let's say Tooele, or down in Beaver, Utah, or up, I'm not originally from Utah, or up in Rich County. Those economic factors and economic needs are going to be very different. And it's important that those regions really sit down and plan. And that's why Workforce Services needs to be involved. And they need to look at what their economy, what their community needs. And the same is true for our state. And so being able to advocate, to talk about how important CTE is. We have a whole bunch of different resources we can show you where to find. We work really hard to collect data and to be able to tell the story, not just anecdotally, stories from students about how much they enjoy it, what it means to them, what a difference it makes in their lives, but also in numbers. And we can spew out a few numbers in just a second. But it's really important to be able to talk about career and technical education today using the right terminology and talk about the value that CTE is for our students. I firmly believe that it plays a very important role in students' education. And as my own children are getting older and we're looking very soon, far too quickly, ahead to high school and what that looks like for them and what they want to study and where they want to go to high school, I think there are a lot more options to kids today than I know I had when I was in high school. I always say if I were a high school student today, my career path would have been very, very different. Now, I never planned to work in education. Quite honestly, it was not in my career goal. I come from industry, but being the director of career and technical education, in a K-12 state system was never, ever on my career path. My background is in health sciences. I worked at a hospital for 15 years. And having opportunities that our students have today, I think opens so many doors. And if students will take advantage of that and use their time in high school and post-secondary wisely, the things that they have available to them are amazing. And again, it's being able to share that story. We're going to show you some resources here in just a second. I mentioned the State Board of Education a minute ago. Andrea's got the link right here. And that will take you to...
Oops. Sorry.
That's all right. When you go back,
Maybe.
you'll have this.
And they're in their OneNote. If they got their OneNote, they should have all of this, all the links that they'll need.
But it will take you so you can see who the board members are and what districts they represent, so that you can find out who your own State Board of Education member is. I would also encourage you to go back and look at your local boards. Do you know who your local board members are? You may not live in that school district, or you may, but you should know who your local board members are and be able to recognize them and know who they are. And encourage your teachers and your directors to invite those local board members and your state board representative out to see different things that you have. If you're having a big event in your district, invite those. Have your directors and your teachers invite those people out. Having them understand what career and technical education is very, very important. And I can't tell you how many times we invite people to things, or people will show up at things, and then they talk to students or talk to us, and they really don't understand what career and technical education is. So educating them, being an advocate for career and technical education is very, very important, and just education as a whole. We had a group of students up at the Capitol last Friday, and we had a whole bunch of legislators and other elected officials in to say hi to the students and to talk to them. And some of them were right on point with their comments, and they knew what it was and knew who their audience was, and others were just completely out there, and they didn't really have a clue what they were talking about. So always, always, always be prepared to advocate. We work hard on our elevator speeches, our little 30-second blurbs about the importance of career and technical education. So there's the links. We'll be going through an election this fall for board members. I think we have half and half, so it's either 7 or 8 of our board members will be up for election again this year. They serve 4-year terms, and half are up every 2 years, and so it'll be a whole new, well, hopefully not. Hopefully we'll have some of them returning. We've got some good board members out there. The next link.
That link goes to where they can find out who their legislative representatives
Perfect. So your legislative representatives, again, I encourage you to know who your senator and who your House of Representatives folks are, just from a personal perspective as well as someone advocating for education. It's always good to have your voice heard. I've been lucky enough to have the opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. and advocate on a national level. And so our state senators and House of Representatives folks, I've been able to meet with their staff and talk with various folks through the years. And again, watching how politics actually happens, decisions are mostly made by people calling their representatives and saying, this is how I feel about a particular issue. And then the staff member who takes that message or answers that phone call will literally put a tick mark up on the board, and the person will come in, the representative will come in and say, okay, well, there's 75% are for and 25% are against. I guess I know how my constituents feel, and we'll vote. And so a lot of times it's simply just getting feedback. And if you don't call, if you don't email and make your own voice heard, I think that's just one of the most important things, that we don't realize that they actually do listen and pay attention. The next piece, I think Andrea's moving me along here. The next piece is the at-a-glance. So the next piece is the at-a-glance and the other information that we have. I mentioned we have a staff member whose job it is to put all of this information together and make it pretty, make it readable, make it usable for everyone. There's a whole website. The link is on your OneDrive and on the agenda. We just started doing this. This is our second year for these at-a-glance documents, is what we call it. We do these. This is our data piece, trying to tell our story. And I've been really pleased that even all the way up to the governor, They're seeing these numbers around career and technical education, being able to talk about them and use them in ways that are helpful to us. And so these documents we put out statewide, and we take those same data points and break it down into those 8 regions that I mentioned earlier and give you regional documents, and then we break it down by LEA. So every district, every charter school with approved CTE programs will have a document like this just for them that's reflective of your students and how you all are doing. It's not a report card, it's just some facts and figures. And I think the one number of anything that is probably the most important that I hear shared out regularly, and it always makes me very happy, is on the second section down on the left, the graduation rate. Utah's current graduation rate for seniors is 86%. As states go, that's actually not too bad. It's horrible if you think about the 14% of students that aren't graduating, but 86 is not a low number nationally. But for students who are CTE concentrators, and Wendy will cover definitions with you a little bit later, concentrator means they've taken 1.5 credits in a pathway, a career pathway. So even if a student will take 1.5 CTE credits in a program area focused on a particular career field, they will graduate at 95%. It's the same group of students. What we know, what that number tells me, is that students are engaged, they're finding a reason to stay in school, and they're doing something as part of their normal school day that is intriguing and interesting to them enough to make them get up and come to school and to stay in school. And so that 95, 96% graduation rate, our number last year was 96, it's hovering in that same area. That's a big, significant difference, and that's really, really, really important. So that at a glance, there's 2 sides to it, lots of information. Again, it's at a state level, a regional level, and an LEA level. They're all on the website. Your directors have them. I encourage you and your directors to share this information, share it out, and we'll update that every year as soon as we have finalized data. All right. The other piece we wanted to talk about was CTE month. Every February nationally is CTE month, and we observe it here in Utah, and we love it. We're just coming out of CTE month. I know there were a lot of really great things happening out there in the schools. We appreciate all the work that the schools have done around CTE month. Lots of resources out there for that month, lots of different things. I know the schools are doing some fun things. One of the coordinators at a school in my school district where I live sent me some pictures of what they were doing, and just some really fun things out there. We just got a copy of an article that a director down in Southeast Utah wrote that was published in the paper around career and technical education that was just fabulous. Using some of that data we just talked about, being able to show how CTE is improving the lives of students and making a difference. So lots of information out there. Advocate, advocate, advocate. Be ready to talk about career and technical education and what it means to students. And what we know is that students like to hear from other students, parents like to hear from parents. So whatever you can do, and we're going to be working hard on that over the course of the next year or two, trying to find ways to improve the perception of career and technical education and make sure that parents hear from other parents and students hear from students. So
Julia, we have a question online.
Great.
She's asking, where are the region and LEA documents located on the website?
So in that same area. And so if they go to, let me pull this up again really quick. So if they go to the Utah State Board of Education website, go to Departments, Career and Technical Education, and then they have this new little, like we call it the hamburger menu, this little 3-line menu. If they go to there and go to Publications, and then Publications for Print, and then you'll see the at-a-glance ones, and if you scroll down, there's different flyers and things. And let's see, where
The region publication tab.
Right.
Oh, there we go. If you click over on the other little tab, so it's state documents, and then there's the regional documents, and you'll see, so Bear River has their regional document at the top, and then you'll have Box Elder and Cache and Intech, and so you can find all just your individual LEA right there.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope, that's
Okay.
it for now.
All right. For me, my last slide is around Career and Technical Student Organizations, the acronym CTSO. So in Utah, we have 7 CTSOs, and if you personally have never been to a CTSO event, I encourage you to get out of the office and go. They are some of the most amazing things that you've ever witnessed. It gives me hope for the future of our country because there are some really great kids. There's a lot of kids out there who need a lot of help and attention, but we have some really, really, really great kids out there. We've got CTSOs going on right now. I think we just finished with FBLA this week. Next week is HOSA, and a TSA I think is next week as well. So in Utah, we have 7 out of the 9 official federally sanctioned CTSOs. So we have DECA, which is for marketing students, FBLA, business, FCCLA, family and consumer sciences, FFA for agriculture, HOSA is for health science. I always come back to Skills USA. TSA is Technology Students of America, that's tech and engineering, and then Skills USA is pretty much for everything else. We call them hammers to hairspray, as we lovingly refer to them. They're for a whole wide range of different classes, different programs, different pathways. I will say that IT does not have their own CTSO. We really encourage them to look at FBLA and also TSA. And I think Skills probably has a few IT-related events, but mainly TSA and FBLA or IT folks. It is a requirement to be an approved program in the state of Utah, an approved CTE program, that your schools have at least one CTSO running and that they're nationally and state affiliated each year. These are really, really good student organizations. These are organizations that are meant to be organized by students, led by students, for students. You always have adult advisors and people who kind of guide the work, but it really is about the students. And when you go to those state and national events, it's amazing to see the leadership skills and qualities that these students develop. It really is a great, great thing for kids. We are looking someday soon at bringing in an 8th CTSO, and that's the bottom one on the list there. Educators Rising is. Laura's going to talk about pathways in a few minutes, but as we roll out our new K-12 Teaching as a Professions pathway and really focus on education and teaching as a viable and important career field, that is another CTSO that we'll bring in. I know a couple of schools are piloting that, have already joined, are working just kind of with the national organization, attending nationals, scoping it out. As we get large enough and we have enough student interest, then we'll build that out and add an 8th CTSO to Utah. But right now, it's just small groups. There's a lot of post-secondary interest in Educators Rising as well. And nearly all of those have both a secondary and a post-secondary component. Some go down into the middle schools as well. We leave all of those decisions up to your LEAs as to who gets to participate, who doesn't. There are local, regional, state events, national events. It's really, really exciting for students and always great to see how much students are actually learning and doing. You look like you had a question.
No.
Okay. What other questions do you have for me around any of those topics? Again, I appreciate you all being here. Good opportunity to learn a lot of things about CTE, probably more than you ever cared to know, but I think it's always good to have lots of information. We're here to help. We're here to answer questions. Feel free to call any of us at any point in time. That's what we're here for. So go ahead.
I just want to tell you, I appreciate you sending out, maybe Andrew sends it out, that what you show as our membership, because what the school says they're doing and what you show they're doing. And
Are always
that
two
gives us a
different
reason to say, it looks like you've told me you have 75 members, but they say you only have 20. And so that helps. So we appreciate you sending out what you show as our membership.
Good. Again, it is required, and so funding is very dependent upon that. And if schools think they're doing one thing, but it's actually, for whatever reason, not showing up in the national and the state records, it's important to know because it does affect overall funding to schools. So again, we are happy to help, take suggestions, take feedback. However we can be more helpful to all of you is our goal and our purpose. So I'm going to sneak out. Again, thanks for being here. Have fun with the rest of your day. And you get to hear from Laura now.
Good. Great. And if we just have a note online from Lisa, if anybody asks a question in here, if we could repeat it, they're not being able to hear the
Do you
question.
want to just tell them just really quick what they said about membership?
Sure.
Okay. Thanks, Laura.
We had a great comment from Kathy in Provo. She said that she was grateful that Andrea sends out the membership numbers to support staff in the LEAs to ensure that whatever we have on record is the same that is on record in the school. Oftentimes teachers might say that they have 75 students in a particular CTSO and they've only registered 20. So it's a great reference to have when Andrea sends it out. If you're not receiving that information from Andrea, it probably would be a good idea to shoot her an email and say, will you send me what you have on your master list so I can cross-reference this with mine?
Yeah, and a lot of time it's just that they haven't got the information up to nationals to come back. And so it's just a reporting issue, and we can fix it on our end as soon as we get that. So,
right. Okay. I love open air question environments. So while I'm going through this, I want to make sure that if you do have questions, I'm going to watch the chat boxes as well. So I want to first say thank you for doing so much with the Data Gateway this year. I'm going to talk about that as part of the program approval process. The slide that Andrea has for program approval is blank, purely because I was going to direct you straight to the website, the CTE website about program approval. Program approval at the state level is under a revision process right now. A lot of you probably have potentially had conversations with your director about it because we're working to get feedback about the process to just ensure that it's working with LEAs and also complying with what we need to do at the state level. There's a lot of different facets with program approval, and one of them is support from the State Board of Education in our department to the teachers and to the directors, and then also there's compliance portions of it as well that we determine if you are approved or not approved for funding. So I feel like I've received a lot of questions around program approval, and so therefore I take a step back and have a little reflection on whether it's the right process. So for the last couple of months, we've had a group internally in the building that has been working to evaluate what we're doing. So you will see changes coming, as you have seen changes already if you've been around a lot. We used to create binders for all the different program areas when we came out to do visits. We're no longer wanting that to happen. So that's one of the big changes that we've had over the last 2 years. But let me direct you to the actual website. You can come in, Wendy. Your seat's right here. It's warm waiting for you. Wendy just got here. So the program approval webpage, if you when you go to it, and that's the URL that's on the agenda, when you click on it, it takes you to the main page. There's, as you see, there's lots of tabs. So you have an overview tab, you have an annual survey, on-site review, membership reporting and auditing. Then there's a new CTE program tab, as well as the CTE administrative program approval. So these are all the current facets to this process. The first page shows you the same people that Talia talked about. So if you need direct communication with any one of our program area folks, there they are. They're listed with their email addresses. I think that actually might be one of the only pages that all of them are listed with their email addresses. So it's a good one to maybe bookmark on your computer. So the annual survey and the data gateway is what I was talking about first, that I wanted to say thank you. A lot of you worked really hard to get that survey information to us this year. It's usually given in the fall of every year. We are now going to do this in January, February, March of every year. And I'll tell you why. There was a lot of feedback from teachers that they said that they didn't know how to fill out the survey if they were new. We have a lot of new teachers, right? So they all said, I'm taking this and trying to give feedback on something that I really don't understand. So we figured if we pushed it until after they've been teaching for at least a full semester, they probably should comprehend what pathways are, what career clusters are, if they have a proper license or endorsement to teach in the program area they're in. So this has been actually a very positive piece for the responses this year. They seem like they know what they're talking about in comparison to before when you'd have people take a survey that they didn't really comprehend the details. Another reason why we moved the survey and we are going to continue to have it in the winter of every year is this will help us determine the on-site reviews for the following year. So if it comes up a flag for risk or you have a teacher that really needs some support, we will put them on our list to ensure they get support from whoever their program area specialist is. Any questions about that so far? Data Gateway. I'm shocked. It's been a very fun year, needless to say. Welcome, Wendy. The next component is that on-site review. So we have a lot of reasons why we come out and do support. Wendy and I go and do compliance visits where we sit down with probably you, the director, business administrator. We talk about the minimum requirements for a program. We talk about the funding, why we were able to give the funding that we gave, why we weren't able to give the funding. When Talia was talking about CTSOs, we've had to take funding away because schools have not had a CTSO. And this is per school site as well. So that's something that I don't think a lot of teachers understand. It's not an actual district allocation, it's a school site allocation. So that's another important thing when you're checking with Andrea and you're verifying that we do have the correct numbers, that you're ensuring that each one of the schools has the correct numbers as well. So the on-site review, you're going to see changes to a 4-year rotation. It was very difficult for us to have all of the LEAs visited on a 3-year rotation. Something else that you will see change is if an LEA has a new CTE director, Wendy and I will plan on going out and doing a face-to-face visit with the new directors in the fall of every year. So we already have a growing list for where we are going. And depending on how many we have total, we will be visiting probably in the early fall. So I'm assuming it's going to be August, September, October visits to just help and let them know that they're not alone and that we are great to work with at the State Office of Education. So you will see these links change as we update the actual full-on process. The next link or the next tab is membership reporting and auditing. You've probably been in contact with Sarah Grisenti this year. She's working a lot with membership auditing and with Wendy. Wendy actually does the calls for membership auditing. So they're also on a rotation, and we are trying to make sure that those membership audits are going to happen at the same time as our program approval on-site review. So it will be a easy thing that you don't have to do unless, of course, you're flagged. You'll have to do it more often than the 4-year rotation. But those are going to be on a 4-year rotation as well. Do you have anything to say about those?
I will.
Okay. Do you want to do it now? Yeah. Okay. Wendy's going to talk about it again. The new CTE programs. Those of you, I'm assuming, that are here already have a full functioning CTE program. We have a lot of new programs that come on each year. We have a handful of new applications that come on, and the application for that is on the webpage as well. There's a new one coming out that will outline the process and the expectation. So if you went through the new approval process recently, that we gained feedback from new CTE directors that said, we really wish that you could have a step-by-step process so we would know what to expect, because it wasn't a really uniform process. So we're working on that. What was I going to say about new programs or something else? I'll try to think and get back to it. So the last tab is the CTE administrative program approval visit. Oh, I know. The new site is also for a new school. So if you're in a school district, let's say Alpine, you've got a new school that's being built, you've got a new high school. I'll say Cache as well. Cache had a new school. And we'd come out and do support visits when you have a new school, because sometimes you have new teachers and you're going to have to establish your new CTSO. And so if you have a new high school in a school district, we'd love to be able to come out and give that school support as well. Sometimes you'll have a new teacher that just needs a phone call with a education specialist, or that's really needs somebody to come out and do a face-to-face. So we will support that in any way that we can. Okay, so the CTE administration program approval visit, that's where Wendy and I go out and we do our visit with the district level team. So we will talk about funding and the membership audits. We'll talk about allocations, state money, federal money, the grants and Wendy's going to talk about that as well shortly too. So is there any question about the program approval, now 4-year annual review, 4-year rotation for your review? Any questions? Okay, I'm going to jump over to pathways. So lucky me, Talia talked about pathways a lot and the importance of CTE, and I think pathways really drive what we do. It drives what teachers should be doing in their classroom. It drives what we do as a program area based upon the recommendations from industry. So this is probably the core thing that we should all be thinking about when we are advocating for our programs and what we each have in our different areas. So we've been working a lot to evolve our CTE program in the state of Utah to align with what's going on nationally. So you will see that the first URL on your agenda for career clusters links to careertech.org, which is the national career cluster webpage. I don't know if
I can take them there.
Okay, Andrea's going to take you there.
I can get it going here. Oh, wrong document. Sorry.
That's okay. So I want to preface this with, when you actually look at the national career clusters, they do not look like what we have in Utah. They they're different from the way that we name things here and our historical way of naming things. So this has been a challenge for some program areas to move, and I will tell you that I was the business and marketing education specialist for 6 years, and we had a very, how do I say this? We had a big change with business and marketing because we were moving to this national model. And when you look at the business and marketing career clusters on this page and then compare them to what we have now in our business and marketing in Utah, you will see that they align really, they're almost identical to this. So business management and administration, you can read through these. You can scroll up, Andrea, if you want. You don't have to click on any of them. I just think that it's a valuable thing for you to see what they're being called nationwide in comparison to what we historically used to call ourselves. We are adopting all of these over the transition. We don't have every single one of them yet, but almost all of them. I think we have 15 out of 16 so far. So,
there's the government one.
Yep. So back to the Utah page. which is the next bullet item on your CTE Pathways agenda item number 6. These are the actual career pathways for the individual program areas, and you see that they look just like the national level now, whereas before it used to be broken out in you had business and marketing, you had facts, you had all tech and engineering. Well, you can see that they are, business and marketing is in business management and administration, it's finance, it's hospitality and tourism, it's in marketing. So it is a multiple area within our career cluster. So when you have teachers, if they're talking about this and thinking, and this happened a lot with the business and marketing merge, there's a lot of teachers that thought they were losing their identity. They thought, well, who am I? Where am I going? And this is not the case. If we talk about driving students into pathways that meet the needs of industry, this is the way that it goes. So just keep that in mind, that decisions are being made purely because of industry input, and this is a good transition. This is where you actually locate pathways. We will have a new document soon for a proposal for an LEA to apply for a pathway that doesn't exist. And we talked about that with Talia a little while ago, about having different areas of the state where these general pathways don't necessarily meet the needs. We can't say that what happens on the Wasatch Front meets the needs of Grand County School District. We talked a lot, I'll just give you an example of meeting with Grand County last week for their program approval, and we asked them, so what pathways are you offering? And they said, well, we've got a bunch of pathways, but to be quite honest with you, when you're down there in that region, well, what's the businesses? What's the local businesses in there? There's a huge hospitality and tourism group. There's, what did they say, like 300 and something hoteliers now in just Moab in that area, which is crazy, right? You don't even, when you drive through there, you don't see all that, but well, and then the next population of businesses are bike shops, right? So what are they offering in the bike maintenance? Well, nothing, because we don't have the course anymore. Well, why didn't we talk about that? Why didn't we say, let's offer this course that's no longer available? Because that's what they do down there. There's national parks right there too. So why aren't we offering some lodging and recreation courses? And so we need to have those conversations that are specific to individual LEAs to ensure that we're providing opportunities for students to make that the economic community grow. That way they do have a job when they get done. And that way the industry partners from Poison Spider Bicycles says, oh, they're teaching them how to work on drivetrains on a bike? Come get a job when you're done with it. That's what we should be doing. So an Alpine School District is a great example as well with the tech industry. It's huge right there, right? That's what they do. So we should be ensuring that those students have an opportunity to take IT courses and complete a pathway, and then they can have a job and have industry partners. So that's why I say that pathways should be the core defining thing with what we do in our individual LEAs. So once you get to the pathway level, when you look at a pathway chart, will you pop up one of the pathway charts, please, Andrea?
Just like the add one. Just go there.
Whoa, the 1819s are posted!
You want me to go to 1819?
That might be something we need to announce.
Yeah.
They must have gone up today.
Don't know that.
Whoa, the directors don't know that.
You guys will know before the video.
You need to go back and be like, yeah, right. You can go back and say, hey, I got to see something cool today that you don't even know about.
They were posted this morning.
Okay, so the 1819 pathway charts are up. So if you look at these pathway charts, you will see that there are courses listed. So the core codes that probably a lot of you enter either into your Cactus system to align teacher assignments or whatever you're doing, this is where the rubber meets the road on the course names. So you've got students, and I'm just going to, you can see on the dark black what kind
Heading?
of heading,
Ribbon.
formatting, ribbon? What would you call that at the top? It's the table, right? Oh, I need to go back to the classroom. I can't even think right now. So that's the career cluster that I was talking to you about. So this is where it all comes together. That's the career cluster, agriculture, food, and natural resources. And then the career pathway in Utah is agriculture, mechanics systems. So there's the courses. And then also Talia talked to you about the difference between completers and concentrators. The concentrator is a 1.0 credit, 1.5 credit, and then the completer is whatever it says on the page. So this one is a 3.0. There's some variation between program area pathway completers. Sometimes that you might see in engineering. I know for a fact that there's a 2.5 to complete an engineering pathway instead of the historical. This you have to have 3.0 credits.
We also have one this year that's 1.5.
Oh, so we have one that's 1.5. Maybe I can give a lollipop to the first person that finds that. Just kidding. Don't do that. That'll take you forever.
It's only 56.
Lisa, I'm banking on you to find this since you found the other one. Okay, so these pathway charts are meant to be a resource for counselors, for you, for CTE directors, for students to look at. What I would do when I was in the classroom teaching, I would print out the ones that we offered in my classroom. In our department, there was 4 business and marketing teachers in my building, and we had the pathway charts, and the students could look at them and determine what they wanted to take next, if that's what they wanted to do. Some of our courses were exploratory, and they were also listed as an elective course on here, and maybe not necessarily a foundation. But at least I had that conversation with the students in the classroom. So they knew that, hey, if you were interested in accounting, you would go in and take accounting next, or business communication, because that was in the same pathway together.
Talk about not needing to offer all.
Yes, so that's a good thing. Wendy said, please make sure to talk about not needing to offer all the courses. You don't need to offer all the courses. That's not what you have to have. So this example that's up on the screen, you can see that they do have to have 2.0 credits, which is the Agriculture Systems Technology 1 and 2. And then you would offer 1 or 2 courses to complete the other 1.0 credit to get the students to a 3.0. And it might be Business Communication 1 and Business Communication 2, and then they would be a completer. Or they might just need to take agricultural machinery technology and have the 3.0 credits with those 3 altogether. I'm so glad that you are the first to see these pathways. I really hope you get to go back and rub it into your directors. They've been asking for these for months. So
I got an email from a pathway coordinator this morning asking for this.
Yeah, Tracy just said she got an email from a pathway coordinator this morning asking for them. So this is exciting. Oh, this kind of makes my day. I think I get to go home now. Okay, so the strands and standards are the things that I just wanted to show you where they are next, because that's the final piece of these courses once you get down to the end of the pathway chart. So if you go back to the main CTE webpage.
Oh, hang on. Let me go back to the main CTE page.
Thank you.
It's sometimes hard on our new website to go back.
Any questions at all from anyone while we're waiting?
I might have to go clear back.
Well, Andrea's going to teach you how to navigate through.
So,
okay, so she's on the main CTE webpage now. So if you go on, scroll back up to the top and click on the hamburger, then you can see the individual program areas. So CTE programs, if you just click on the agriculture one, because we were already on that when we did the pathway. Maybe.
There's a comment from Jim Stocks on that CAD architectural is 1.5 credits.
Oh, Jim, you get the next lollipop. Winner, winner. Nice, Jim.
Really, CAD architectural design? I don't think that was the one. I'll have to go back and look now.
Okay, so we're on agriculture. Jim, thanks for letting me use Moab as an example of offering a program for a specific region. I appreciate you being here.
Okay, so courses.
Okay, so let's actually go back so I can talk about some other stuff too really quick. If you look when you click on any one of the program areas, there's the menu on the right-hand side, which not a lot of people would see that when they first would have gone down on here. This is the new navigation of the USBE website. So if you, there's all the pathways. So the career pathways for each program area are listed there. There's also the course information. Course information is where we're going to talk about strands and standards. CTSO that aligns with the individual program is right there too. That's what Talia talked about a little bit earlier. Any important links, educational endorsements. But let's go to this program approval one really quick because we talked about that. There's a program approval document on here for each program area. Those are the old historical ones that we used to require that every single teacher turn in. It's a great reference for teachers when they're going through program approval to have some self-reflection on whether or not they're doing things like they should, or it's a checklist of, am I properly endorsed? When do I need to look at my license to renew it? Those are the steps that I think program approval should help teachers to think about. Am I actually teaching the strands and standards that are approved through the state that correspond to the courses? So that document is still going to be on here, but it's just not something that's required for each one to turn in anymore. So remember that. Okay, you can go back, Andrea. Thank you. I didn't mean to deviate from the strands and standards, but I felt like I needed to. So if you'll click on course information, and we talked about agriculture systems and technology. Is that the one we were talking about? So if you scroll down and just click on any one of the ag ed courses, it has a drop down on it. This is where you'll find the core code, also the course description and the strands and standards document for each one. So this is what teachers should be teaching in the class when they're teaching one of their courses. And each one of them has all the information needed. The educator endorsement that's needed to teach the class, it's listed on the top as well. So that's a question that we get a lot as specialists. I have a teacher teaching digital literacy. What endorsement do they need? Well, look at the strands and standards documents and you'll see exactly what they need on there. So these are great resources for you as well. That concludes my 2 agenda items. Does anyone have any questions for me? Okay, thanks again. I have to say that I know that the reason why CTE programs are successful is because of you. I know the reason why I'm successful is because of Carrie, Tracy, and Andrea. So I appreciate everything that you do more than you know. And when I retire, I'm going to be you. This is what I want to do. Is go back and be able to just make somebody's day every day. So thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Okay, I'm done.
We want to introduce you to Wendy Morton. She's our other CTE coordinator here at the state office, and she's going to take over the next agenda item.
Oh, I thought we were doing break first. We're not.
One more. And then
Okay, one more and then breaks. I'm between you and a break.
Better go fast.
Woo. All right. So it looks like what we have on the list is skills certification.
So their link takes them here.
Their link takes them there.
Yeah. Not to the precision exams.
Okay, so I'm going to have to look at the screen while I talk to you guys. So skill certification is a program that we use in the state of Utah. Each of our courses have, and I say each, there are a few that do not have state certification exams, but the majority do, and we're developing others. There's a certification exam that goes with each course, and we do that to show a proficiency level within each course. And along with the exam, there's also a portion that's tied to the skills certificate program that is performance based. And so there are performance documents that go along with this program. So we'll walk through some of these pieces, but I wanted to kind of give you an overview of what the program is. We contract through a private vendor to offer these exams. Oftentimes we will have teacher teams come up to our office and help in the development of the certification exams along with our vendor and people in our office. And we also vet those out with industry along with the standards. So if you ever had an industry partner who wanted to, or if you were working with a local industry and you wanted them to start recognizing the certification that the students were earning at your school through this program, we actually allow industry partners we set up an appointment for them and we can actually allow them to take the certification exam themselves. And what we've done is there's been a few industry partners that they don't really feel like they have to take it, but they want to go read the questions and see what the students are answering. And they look at the strands and standards that are developed. And so what we've had is we've had industry partners who then start recognizing this credential. And at that point, it then becomes more than just a state certification. It's also an industry certification. So we are working on that. We're working to expand that across the state. Our industry partner is actively working with industries around the certification programs that we offer. So as a local agency, and I'll use Laura's example of bicycle repair maintenance, maybe it's a bicycle technician, what happened there? Technician certification. And the industry partner wants to know what that really means. So we could have the industry partner come in and look at and take that certification, which would then allow them to understand what students actually are gaining in the classroom, both skills and knowledge. And then they would be able to then start recognizing that and giving students a preference for hiring if they have that certification. So there's two components, like I said. One is the knowledge exam portion, which is done online. And that, in order to be certified, you have to get at least an 80% or higher on the exam. And then you also have to have your performance pieces marked off by the teacher, and the teacher would validate that the student has met the performance criteria. And so those two pieces together are what equal a certification. And so we then can say that that student is proficient with a certain amount of knowledge and skill when they leave the classroom based on the content that was taught in that particular class. And once you start getting a series of those, for example, we can use welding, right? So welding 1, welding 2, and welding 3. And a student who has certifications in all of those is extremely proficient in welding. And there are industry exams that other industry exams that also tie to some of our classes. So I can't drive. So this is unusual for me.
I know she likes to drive.
So I'm going to look at the screen. So
where do you want
when you come to the skill certification section of our website, you can see a place where you can see all of the exams. Let's go to all of the tests over here on the right. Down.
Oh, right there?
Yep.
Okay.
So we have them categorized currently by program area. So go ahead and just pick one, Andrea. I don't really, no, sorry, I do care.
Okay.
Changed my mind. Let's go to IT. Okay. So you can see there's a lot of exams within information technology. Some of these exams are the ones that are written by us, and others are another third-party certification that we recognize as well. So anything over here that's in the 900s is usually, and I've got to look at his numbering system now, make sure it hasn't changed. Usually anything that's in a 900 is another third-party industry exam. And so that would mean that Maybe it's through Certiport. Maybe it's through ASE for automotive. Maybe we have, for this example, there's a test out option and a Linux option. So there are, our CompTIA is another third-party certification company. And so if students are earning those certificates, we have a process with our system that allows the teacher or someone within the district to upload those into our system, and we actually award funding back to the LEA based on a student earning a certification in those areas. What we're finding, and I don't know how many of you have to deal with this, but I would guess some of you maybe upload those or collect the paperwork for some of those things for your district. What we're finding is not everybody's turning them in. So we're finding out that a lot of students are getting these industry certifications that we don't know about. And if we don't know about them, the funding doesn't go back to the district. That's one thing, right? But another thing is we don't know, like it's hard for us to brag about what's happening across the state and to really know, have they seen the data snapshot?
They did like at a glance.
At a glance, yeah.
So
the at a glance document, we don't know, we don't know that, I can tell you that what we've reported there is probably lower, really is lower than what's actually happening in the state. Because we know that students are earning certifications that we're not finding out about until after the fact, or maybe never have found out about. So it is very important for us to try and get these, when legislators or board members ask what's happening in a region or in an LEA, this is a really, this kind of information to them is really interesting. Like this, they really want to know about this kind of stuff because it helps them understand that the money they're putting into current technical education programs is actually benefiting the community and the student. And so this IT is a very good example of all the options. There's lots of options available in here.
Wendy?
Yes.
Ruth Ann has a question online. She wants to know how they are reported. So how the schools report that to us.
Okay.
Repeat the question just so they can.
So Ruth Ann would like to know how the schools report the information to us, right? Okay, so Andrea, I'm going to have you go to the Precision Exams website. And there should be a link on our site somewhere, but I'm guessing it's not right here with the list.
Is it not?
Test administration, I would say. Yes, so down at the bottom, last bullet. So there's Precision Exams. So, and this system looks like this right now, and your teachers have logins. If your CTE director approves, we can give you a login, but you have to have district approval because it gives you student level data. And so what you do here is you can log in either as a teacher. It says student login. There is also an administrator login up at the top of there. So if you go, yeah. So if the teacher logs in, and I don't know if my teacher login, sorry, that's the admin that you clicked on, I think.
I thought that's what you wanted. You want the
So the
teacher
admin would be if you were a district person and your district gave you permission to see some reports, you would log in under admin. If you're a teacher and you're uploading to the system to report your exams, you actually log in as your teacher. And so the teacher, and how long it's been?
Do you want to try to
So
log
is this
in?
something that most of the teachers report on their own?
They should be, yes.
And if they're not?
If they're not, then we're not getting the information.
Is there a way for us to check that the teachers are reporting that?
Yeah, so if you were to get an administrative login, you would be able to see what was being reported and by who.
And like what tests they're administering?
And what tests they're administering as well.
And what, like how many kids are passing?
Yep, you would be able to see all of the data. So a district level admin allows you to see all of the schools within your LEA. Okay, a school login only allows you to see what's happening within your school. So a teacher, for example, can only see the tests they have administered. They cannot see what their neighboring teacher next door has administered. But a testing coordinator, if you have one at your school that has been given administrative rights, would be able to see everyone at that school who is testing and what they're uploading. But what we're finding, and I probably should log in, maybe I will log in as an admin. is it this connector? No, you're through the
You're
port.
just on air media.
So I'm going to log in as an administrator, maybe, if I can remember my password.
Oh, I got out.
Okay.
And while we're waiting on this, there's been a comment, and I checked it myself. Unfortunately, the 1819 pathway documents are not actually a live link.
Well, the individuals, but if you look at the summary, the total of all of them,
The individual documents, the 1819 individual documents, that list is not available.
the actual list of the names.
The career pathway charts
Oh,
and
look
the
at
career
that. I
pathway
remember my
lists
login.
are not available.
Okay. I'll show you where they are because I just clicked on them.
Okay.
So I'm an admin, and just so you know, starting after July 1st, we're actually going to be using an upgraded system, so it's going to be slightly different. The reports will look slightly different, but it's the same vendor. We're just upgrading systems, and so there's going to be a slight change in some of these things. So what I can do is, I'm trying to think of where's the best way to show you this. So a teacher would go in and they would proctor an exam, and they would come in and they would set up their exam within the system. And we actually have a specialist in our office that we could do and schedule another online training. That he already did one for directors. We could do one specifically for this group if we wanted to. We could do so. And that we have the PowerPoint.
We do.
So we could give the PowerPoint as well.
I'll put it in the other help.
Yeah.
Okay,
That would be
great.
good.
Thanks, Carrie.
So the teacher would come in here and be able to list their course. And so in order for me to upload certifications, I have to create the class or the exam that they're in. And so you would come in here and do that. And I believe the PowerPoint shows you exactly how to set that up. If I am looking, so here's you don't want to see that. So another thing that's in here, and sorry, there is a report. I'm just going to not click on tabs for a second. So there is a report, and it's up over here, and it's called user authentication. So the user authentication is what we use to identify that the student is actually a real student within the data system in the state, so that they have a real SIS number, a state number. So every district has a list of user authentication if you have your admin, and if you have students in that list, that means they have not been authenticated, which means you're not earning funds back for them. And it also comes back to our Perkins requirements of how we report for Perkins, because we use the data and the number of certifications to report for federal purposes as well. We don't use students' individual names, but we do use how many students earn certifications in the state of Utah in what areas. Okay? And so if you have students in your non-authenticated list, that means, one, they used the wrong SSID number, because it's not just your school ID, it's the actual SSID number. Or they used the wrong name. So like Gregory used Greg, right? Or Jonathan used John, or Sally used Becky, for whatever reason, right? So they may put in, or they may have a first and a middle name. It's whatever's on their school record. And so if the name that they entered is not what's actually on their school record for the SSID system, SIS. Yeah. Anyway, so if it's not exactly the same, then it gives an error. The teacher, in order to make it so the student is not able to take the exam, we have made it so the teacher can override and let the student in. And what we're finding in a lot of cases is sometimes it's the same teacher that overrides all of their students instead of having them log in with their name. And so what we've asked for LEAs to do is go back to that list, see what's wrong. If what they entered is actually correct, that probably means the SSID system is not up to date. And whoever maintains your SSID system in your district needs to make a change to that student's record. And so once that's done, you're allowed to push button basically, and it allows you to re-authenticate that student. And so you can always send them through later. And then it would still validate the student. And then when we get the data back, it's all fairly clean. We know that these students are all real students. We don't have Justin Bieber taking 5 exams again. We had that a few years ago, you know, kids just entering random names. And so it just allows us to show that it's really valid. Okay. And that would be the same with industry exams as well. So there's a spreadsheet, and on the spreadsheet you have a student's first name, last name, you'll have their district, their SSID number, and you upload it to the system, and then the system authenticates each of those students, and it will tell you how many errors. So you don't have to enter them one at a time. You could upload 500, and it wouldn't matter. It authenticates all of them. And so with the industry exam portion, you would enter it through your admin login here. And it looks like I am not going to be able to do that without setting up an exam. So we'll send you the steps. There is a step-by-step on how to do it. We'll put it in this folder for you to reference later. So I would say the user authentication tool is something that you guys would probably like to see. There are also reports. So I'm just going to click on the reports because I know they won't come up until I search them. But you can choose, and you would find your, I want CTE reports, and I want to pull a district summary report, let's say, and I'm going to use this as a fake testing pool, so I'm going to go ahead and pull it. And then you select your dates and the type of report that you're going to pull. And so the nice thing is all those reports are available, and there is an industry test report in there as well. And so you can see if it'll load here.
It's a very slow computer.
Right, it is.
Yeah.
You can see that who's testing and what the results are. Teachers can actually go back in and see by strand and standard where their low areas are, actually. So, well, we're going to do it the hard way because I picked PDF, which I thought was going to be faster.
So if we want our director to get access to this for us, who should they send the email to?
So you can request it through...
Can you repeat the question for those
on
WebEx because they can't hear the questions?
Oh, because there's no mics back there.
Right.
So the question was whether or not who we contact to get access, right? So on our website, you can actually contact Greg Richens or Susan Loamano, and you can also contact Precision Exams. The main thing I would tell you is that if you are asking for district access, your CTE director will have to give authorization. So make sure that they've either sent an email saying it's okay, or I don't know, somehow you've got the okay from them, because they'll have to go back and check to make sure it's okay. And if you are a support for a multi-district, we do have a few multi-districts out there, then you would need the okay from all of the districts. And they need to understand that it is student level data, so some of you will have, each LEA has their own sort of rules and guidelines of how who they give permission to for student level data, so you'll need to make sure they understand you will have access to student level data.
Monday, we also have a note from Lisa Hilton on common errors for entering students. She said don't use nicknames or preferred names listed on roll. Check Encore, not the roll. Need legal first and last name on birth certificate, transcript only. Watch for misspelled names. Watch for Latino Pacific Island names that have double first and or last names.
Yeah.
Some have spaces or hyphens, so check Encore for spelling. She also says you need suffix added to the last name, like Thompson Jr. or Thompson the second, third, or fourth. It's not case sensitive, so you can use a lowercase I, and don't put a period after junior. She said inadvertently using current year for birth year or incorrect day is another common mistake, and don't use SSID. You should only use DSD student ID.
So
gender at birth.
Yeah, so that's your local.
That's the district.
That's your local ID. So a lot of kids will use their lunch number. What that does is it checks against our system, which would then identify back the actual SSID. We know that most students don't necessarily know their SSID or haven't in the past, And so, but they do know their school number, and whatever their school number is what they're entering. That is correct, yes. Yes, and the name, it is whatever is on their official record. Otherwise, it will give you errors. Yeah, those are all very common. You could put those all in a list, and it would be helpful, I'm sure. So the reports, if I go back to this report, where was it? It didn't, oh, did I close it? Anyway, the report list, I'm going to go back to the report list. There are a lot of, let's see. So the State Skill Cert Industry Test report, that is the report that you would pull that shows you what's been submitted by your teachers in your district. It would show you what exams, which students, when, all of that would come up in that report. Okay, so the other part of that is that they need to send in verification. So we have to verify that the students actually passed the exam. And so you have to send in, and this is another part that teachers generally, I just want to look at the list. This is another part that teachers generally forget to do because a lot of times it's at the end of the year or they get busy or something. Throughout the year, it does not have to be at the end of the year, but prior to June 15th, we have to receive your backup that shows that the student's actually certified. And so you send it in to our office to Susan Loamano, and you can send it through Move It digitally. You can send it by paper. You can bring it to the office. There's lots of ways for us to actually get it. And so there are specific instructions that go along with that, and we'll provide those in the OneDrive for you to go back to later. But just know that that's another piece. If we don't get the backup, then we don't validate it. So, because anybody can upload any number of list of students, and so we have to go through and validate those.
And is that something the teacher also usually that takes care of?
Sending in the paperwork?
Uh-huh.
Yes. Or a testing coordinator. It depends on how you worked it out at your district. Yes. Okay. Is that all on SkillCert, or was there something else specific?
No, that's probably it. The other thing that I just wanted to mention is we're not messaging out that they're even getting skill certifications down to the student level.
Oh, yeah.
Because after reading 250 scholarship applications this year, the students will be applying for the scholarship application and they'll be saying, and we have their transcript and we know they've taken like 5 CTE classes, for example, and then the next question on the application is, what skill certifications do you have? And they say none. If they got an A or a B in the class, we know they probably passed the test, right?
Yeah.
So they probably do have them, and they don't know that they even have them. So the teachers are not messaging this out really great, and the students aren't getting the information that they're earning these certificates that could potentially, be used on a resume, could help them get a job, and so that they've earned this competency and be able to share it. So we need to message that out a little bit better. The students aren't quite understanding how they could be used and what the worth is of these exams. And so, help us message that out a little bit better.
Yeah, so I would say when we started looking at the reports, what we found was like maybe a fourth or less of the teachers were even accessing the reports. And that hardly any of them were actually printing off the certifications for their students. So the students really aren't getting them. And so what we're actually having now is people come back from their mission, or they'll be a first-year college student, and then they're trying to call back and say, oh, I need that certification. I know I took this test. Can I have that? And it's really hard for us to get them the certification after. It's a lot harder for us to get them the certification after the fact. It's much easier for them to get it then. And so they are available as soon as they pass. These reports are what we consider real time. So you will actually see results by the next day, if not within a couple hours, depending on the time of day that our system refreshes. And so it's usually within a 24-hour period, all of the reports will be updated to what the teacher currently has done. And so, and how the students have passed. And the teacher will be able to see the results instantly for each student. So as a student certifies, if the student actually gets the certification, it actually shows them their score. They know whether or not they've passed the certification, and the teacher has access to that certificate right then and can print it for them.
And something else I just wanted to say is I think that teachers and students obviously don't know that these certifications now are being tied more to industry, a lot more, and that's why we have industry come in and help with the test, because there are industries now that will recognize that certification as something that they can use on their resume to be hired with.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's being messaged out really well, and higher ed is also using those.
Is there a way we could know what industries?
Yes. So the question was whether or not we can know which industries. So on the Precision Exams website, which I just closed, and I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to remember exactly where they posted these. Let's get them the link. I'm wondering if they. So we actually have a section on the website, if I can find it, that says, let's see if this is it.
I think they're all the way at the bottom.
Are they at the bottom? But not of every page.
Not every page.
I'd have to go back and find it. But there's a whole bunch of industries. There's a list. We can get you that list. Some of them are nationwide industries. So Precision Exams works with other states as well. And then some of them are specific to Utah. Oh, that's the leadership. There we go. So Brock Smith, there's a picture of Brock. Brock is the one in Utah who works with our industry partners. If you have industry that you want to start working with and you want to get them in support of what's happening in your area, Brock is the one that you would contact to help get that and make that happen locally. Of course, we can always help with that process, but you're also always welcome to reach out to him and he can help facilitate that work.
Wendy, we've got a couple more questions. Lisa Hilton had a comment that it would be great if we could streamline the process for industry reporting. She's asking, can the supporting documentation be sent electronically only? Better yet, is there a way to get the test results for industry reporting directly from the third-party sites, like UNAR, etc.? These sites have the correct data and know the test results. Could this data be directly downloaded from those sites into Precision Exams? Then the supporting documentation and data entry process would be greatly simplified.
So the question is whether or not we can simplify the industry exam process and have only electronic versions submitted. So I'm currently working on that with the people in our office to work more on a digital process so you don't have to actually bring in the paper copies. And so I need to get back with them and see what message they've sent already this year. I believe they asked for paper copies still this year. We may change that before the end of the year, but for sure we can change it for next year. And what I would say as far as getting it directly from the third party, right now we don't have the ability to do that because that requires us to sign an agreement with that third party vendor, and we don't necessarily own the rights to that information. So that information does belong to you as an LEA or to the student individually. And so there's a certain type of agreement that everyone would have to sign in order for us to receive that data. And right now those are not in place across the state for all of our industry certifications. We are trying to work with our biggest vendor, which is Certiport, to have an agreement in place so that we can do that in the future. But what it requires us to do is have an agreement at the local level that your teachers then give to students and the students then agree to and parents agree to. So it may be part of a disclosure statement or part of some paperwork that is given to the student at the beginning of the class once we know that those are in place, then we can start working in that direction. But right now, we don't have the ability to put all of those agreements in place.
Thank you. There was another comment from Alexa Webb that Greg Gritchens had a slide on the value of the certifications.
Yeah.
Is that in that package?
It is in that
post?
PowerPoint.
Okay.
He did, yes.
Okay, so that will be posted on the website. And
Yeah.
we had one other question. Laura Giles wanted to know if the students who applied for scholarships have been notified yet.
They have just been notified this last week.
Okay.
Yes, so they can talk about that.
Okay. So we'll also get you the link where Precision Exams also lists all of the industries that have signed on as supporters. So we'll also do that. Okay, the scholarship and tuition awards tied to Skill Cert. Andrea's already talked about that. Other than that little piece of information, the other thing I would say is helping them come in on time and making sure students and parents are aware. That's one of the scholarships that I think we don't necessarily have a lot of awareness across the state that these exist the way that they do. And it's a great, are you going to drive over there? Okay.
Keep talking.
So I think working with counselors, working with CTSO advisors, working with your teachers to make sure, because I will tell you there's probably teachers that don't even know that these scholarships exist. And so I think making sure just awareness that it's there and that we do these annually, that a student can apply for in their senior year and can use for that following fall. There's times where they can defer.
It depends on the
institution. They have certain requirements at each institution. They're not funded through our office. So USBE does not fund them. What it is, it's a tuition waiver. So our partnership with, in most cases, it's a tuition waiver, I should say that. Our office has a partnership with the USHE and UTech, the technology colleges, and we coordinate this every year to provide these scholarships for students. And so those institutions basically donate the scholarships for this, and that's how those scholarships are organized and available to students. So it's not actually funded through our office, but we coordinate it and award them out.
One thing I will say about that is, and messaging that out, is last year, for example, we couldn't fill one of the scholarships to one of the technical colleges. This year, there was actually 3 that we couldn't fill. And so it breaks my heart that there's money out there for kids and nobody applied for it. So like 2 from Ogden Weber and 2 from MATC did not get filled this year.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have enough kids applying for those
areas. Well, and part of it,
schools.
Yeah, and part of it too is the fact that they get to choose a first choice and a second choice. Well, some of the kids aren't willing to go anywhere other than their first choice. So if they're awarded a scholarship and it's not to their first choice, they turn it down. So then we have to go to the next one, right? The next person. So it may be that people put MATC as a second choice, but most of them got their first choice in this case, right? So we just need to make sure that we have enough to fill. Otherwise, these institutions will quit giving the scholarships. They just won't give us money.
Lisa Hilton has a question. When students receive a CTE scholarship, would our office be able to notify the CTE district office who the list of students and schools are?
Right now, so what happens in the process is all the applications came in. They were then judged through a rubric by all the specialists, education specialists in our office. They were then awarded, depending on their score, to the schools, and the letters just went out this week. So then there's a I accept kind of letter that has to come back to us, and then if they decline it, we would go to the next student that were on the waiting list, kind of, and they're offered the scholarship. We have to wait for those to come back, yes or no, And so it continues on for a couple weeks here.
And
then in April, we have our banquet, and they all come. Around that banquet time, mid-April, we do put a list together for the institution and for the CTE directors that have the list of students and who won from each LEA, and we message that out to them. So we could give it to support staff too. We just we usually just send it.
I think Lisa's
to the
at
district.
MATC, right?
Yeah, she should get that. It goes to her scholarship coordinator, whoever is the contact that we have for MATC or MTech. Then we would send it to them. But we usually also send it to the director. So I'm not sure why Lisa's not getting it. So, but we can make sure we get it to her.
There was another question on how many options they can put down for schools.
Isn't it 3?
Well, we used to do 3, but we were finding that no one picked the third choice. And so we've now narrowed it down to just the first and second choice. Because we're finding most often it's their first choice, and very rarely will they take the second choice. But there is some that will take their second choice. So we just have 2 on the application currently. It's just 2 choices.
And you haven't found that a third has ever been really
Never.
Okay.
And so that's why we took it off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to give them a break for a minute before I do the other? Because it's already.
Yep, that's my break.
Oh.
Okay. So we're because you guys have been sitting for a very long time, and we want to give everybody a break here in the studio and also out in the field. I'm going to play a TED Talk that's called Lollipop Leadership, and I really think it's really good. And you can go back to it later and watch it. But we also want everybody in the studio and out in the field to stand up, take a break, go to the restroom, get a drink, whatever you need to do, and we'll take a break for about 10 minutes while we show this video, and then we'll be back.
I want to start by asking everyone in the audience here a question. How many of you are completely comfortable with calling yourselves a leader? See, I've asked that question all the way across the country. Everywhere I ask it, no matter where, there's always a huge portion of the audience that won't put up their hand. And I've come to realize that we have made leadership into something bigger than us. We made it into something beyond us. We made it about changing the world. And we've taken this title of leader and we treat it as if it's something that one day we're going to deserve. But to give it to ourselves right now means a level of arrogance or cockiness that we're not comfortable with. And I worry sometimes that we spend so much time celebrating amazing things that hardly anybody can do, that we convinced ourselves that those are the only things we're celebrating. And we start to devalue the things that we can do every day. And we start to take moments where we truly are a leader, and we don't let ourselves take credit for it, and we don't let ourselves feel good about it. And I've been lucky enough over the last 10 years to work with some amazing people who have helped me redefine leadership in a way that I think has made me happier. And with my short time today, I just want to share with you the one story that is probably most responsible for that redefinition. I went to a school on a little school called Mount Allison University in Sackville, New Brunswick. And on my last day there, a girl came up to me and she said, "I remember the first time that I met you." And then she told me a story that happened 4 years earlier. She said, "On my day before I started university, I was in a hotel room with my mom and my dad, and I was so scared and so convinced that I couldn't do this, that I wasn't ready for university, that I just burst into tears. And my mom and my dad were amazing. They were like, 'Look, we know you're scared, but let's just go tomorrow. Let's go to the first day, and if at any point you feel as if you can't do this, that's fine. Just tell us, we will take you home. We love you no matter what.'" And she said, so I went the next day, and I was standing in line getting ready for registration, and I looked around and I just knew I couldn't do it. I knew I wasn't ready. I knew I had to quit. And she says, I made that decision, and as soon as I made it, there was this incredible feeling of peace that came over me. And I turned to my mom and my dad to tell them that we needed to go home. And just at that moment, you came out of the student union building wearing the stupidest hat I have ever seen in my life. It was awesome. And you had a big sign promoting Shinorama, which is Students Fighting Cystic Fibrosis, a charity I've worked with for years. And you had a bucket full of lollipops. And you were walking along and you were handing the lollipops out to people in line and talking about Shinorama. And all of a sudden, you got to me and you just stopped and you stared. It was creepy. This girl right here knows exactly what I'm talking about. And then you looked at the guy next to me and you smiled and you reached in your bucket, you pulled out a lollipop and you held it out to him. And you said, you need to give a lollipop to the beautiful woman standing next to you. And she said, I have never seen anyone get more embarrassed faster in my life. He turned beet red. And he wouldn't even look at me. He just kind of held the lollipop out like this. And I felt so bad for this dude that I took the lollipop. And as soon as I did, you got this incredibly severe look on your face, and you looked at my mom and my dad, and you said, look at that. Look at that. First day away from home, and already she's taking candy from a stranger. And she said everybody lost it. 20 feet in every direction, everyone started to howl. And I know this is cheesy, and I don't know why I'm telling you this. But in that moment when everyone was laughing, I knew that I shouldn't quit. I knew that I was where I was supposed to be, and I knew that I was home. And I haven't spoken to you once in the 4 years since that day, but I heard that you were leaving. And I had to come up and tell you that you've been an incredibly important person in my life, and I'm going to miss you. Good luck. And she walks away, and I'm flattened. And she gets about 6 feet away, she turns around and smiles and goes, you should probably know this too. I'm still dating that guy 4 years later. A year and a half after I moved to Toronto, I got an invitation to their wedding. Here's the kicker. I don't remember that. I have no recollection of that moment. And I've searched my memory banks because that is funny and I should remember doing it. And I don't remember it. And that was such an eye-opening, transformative moment for me to think that maybe the biggest impact I'd ever had on anyone's life, a moment that had a woman walk up to a stranger 4 years later and say, you've been an incredibly important person in my life, was a moment that I didn't even remember. How many of you guys have a lollipop moment, a moment where someone said something or did something that you feel fundamentally made your life better? All right. How many of you have told that person they did it? See, why not? We celebrate birthdays where all you have to do is not die for 365 days. And yet we let people who have made our lives better walk around without knowing it. And every single one of you has been the catalyst for a lollipop moment. You have made someone's life better by something that you said or that you did. And if you think you haven't, think about all the hands that didn't go back up when I asked that question. You're just one of the people who hasn't been told. But it is so scary to think of ourselves as that powerful. It can be frightening to think that we can matter that much to other people. Because as long as we make leadership something bigger than us, as long as we keep leadership something beyond us, as long as we make it about changing the world, we give ourselves an excuse not to expect it every day from ourselves and from each other. Marianne Williamson said, our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our greatest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light and not our darkness that frightens us. And my call to action today is that we need to get over that. We need to get over our fear of how extraordinarily powerful we can be in each other's lives. We need to get over it so we can move beyond it. And our little brothers and our little sisters, and one day our kids, or our kids right now, can watch us start to value the impact we can have on each other's lives more than money and power and titles and influence. We need to redefine leadership as being about lollipop moments. How many of them we create, how many of them we acknowledge, how many of them we pay forward, and how many of them we say thank you for. Because we've made leadership about changing the world, and there is no world. There's only 6 billion understandings of it. And if you change one person's understanding of it, one person's understanding of what they're capable of, one person's understanding of how much people care about them, one person's understanding of how powerful an agent for change they can be in this world, you've changed the whole thing. And if we can understand leadership like that, I think if we can redefine leadership like that, I think we can change everything. And it's a simple idea, but I don't think it's a small one. And I want to thank you all so much for letting me share it with you today. Have a great day at TED. I'll see you later.
I'm not going to use the checkout laptop next time. No.
Just go get my test.
So is it still broadcasting, Tracy? Because I'm not seeing it. Did Jerry turn it off?
No, that is. Yep, you're still live.
So we're good. Kind of already did it.
One for sure with that.
You're gonna go out to dinner?
No, I don't know what we're doing. That's what I'm. Are we eating there? Are we eating after the meeting?
I think during, sort of.
So we'd be done by 6:30?
I think 6:30.
6:30.
Are you gonna stay over at Christina's tonight?
So they're changing things up and I take the CTE course.
I was hoping we would get that course there. We might not. And then I have to kind of put your studio down together. So check it out about that. We'll just really do it.
Oh, yeah. How was it set up?
Well, I took his big tables out like that. Some of them are out in the hall. I switched them out for the ones that go in basement west, but we can just call them really quick in the basement west. And got the smaller chairs and stuff to be able to fit as many people in here from basement west. So. As soon as Wendy's back, we'll start again.
That's when I said we all sit here.
There's really, you're connected through a number.
Yeah. So we can just I'll log off this one and you log on. As soon as we do this, we'll just log you off and on. It's like 10, 10, 70, 60. So if you want to get it ready.
I love that they do that, and
Sure.
with reminders that, make sure this or change this or whatever. Yeah, majority of something is, yeah, that's
Maybe, don't worry about it, we'll do it in a minute.
Okay.
So we're ready to start.
All right. Jerry, we're ready to start again here. We'll get going so we can get these ladies off to their weekend.
I think you actually ran down.
I was gonna say, I think it's
Is
on.
he gone?
Can you, I was gonna say, they can still hear us, right? I think he left it running.
Mine looks different.
Oh.
I don't know why. But maybe.
You're seeing everything, everybody in the room.
Yeah, I don't know.
What are you guys seeing? Are you seeing us or everybody in the room?
I'm just looking at chat, so I'll look at that. I'm seeing you guys,
Okay.
so we're good.
Okay. So one of the things I'm going to go over really quick is Midas. Midas is a system that replaced On Track for credit. When you guys are organizing and doing trainings within your regions or districts, you can request Midas credit or USBE credit / relicensure points. And so you do that through the Midas system. And I am not the one to show you how to use Midas. So we're going to let somebody else do that for you if you guys have time. Otherwise, I'm sure there's some tutorials that can be sent out. But my work within Midas consists of please log in and sign this right now. So I have not done really anything in Midas. But it is available. We do sometimes have districts and regions that say, we're organizing this activity or this professional development and we would like to give teachers credit. Can we do that? Yes, you can. You apply through that through Midas, and you can do that in the system and with help from others here at USBE. So just know that that's available. CTE Summer Conference is something that we do annually. There's probably quite a few of you that work with your directors and your teachers to get registrations in, budgets, meals, travel paid for, all of those kinds of things. Each year we do that. We try and come up with a little bit different theme, if you will. There are some things that we ask specialists to talk about at summer conference and to cover. So, for example, this year, one of the things that we've asked them to go over are the value of the CTE skill certifications, so that teachers are hearing it from multiple areas, and so that they have a better understanding of what the skill certification exams can be used for and how they benefit students. So the other thing that we've asked them to talk about are the pathways and how those are moving in the direction that we're moving in with pathways. So when you hear teachers come back from summer conference, hopefully they've at least got those two things out of everything that they've heard at summer conference. But we do ask the specialists to cover certain things, and it is a great opportunity for your teachers. Andrea is the one that you coordinate with to reserve. Andrea and Sarah are the ones that you coordinate with to reserve spots. We no longer offer on-site registration for anyone attending the conference, and so everyone has to be registered ahead of time. And to help with those spots that are teachers leaving, new teachers coming on, and you don't really know exactly who they are, you can reserve LEA districts slots. So you can say, at the IT conference, I want 2 slots, no names yet, and at the Ag conference, I want 1, and you can reserve as many as you want. You can cancel those reservations up through, what did we put on there, 2 weeks?
Yeah, it's like 2 weeks ahead. I think it's like May, toward the
Or
end
right
of May.
before it closes, right? So right before we close, you can cancel those reservations if you're not going to fill them. If you haven't filled them by then, you have until the conference, right, to figure out who, if you have a new teacher by then, who can go. And you just let us know. They still get all of the conference benefits. It just allows you to have some slots. The CTE directors were fairly concerned about being able to do that, knowing that they have staff changeover that happens in June. So, and then our office sends a bill for anybody using a purchase order, and then we'll coordinate with you and your CTE director to have that payment come back into the district, or from the district to us.
When does registration open?
It's April 1st. Yeah, it'll open April 1st. That is on a weekend this year, but it still will open. It's automated. It will just open, and it closes on
June 1st.
June 1st. And so, again, if they don't get in by that date, cancel by that date, they're sort of locked in for the payment. We did have some concern, 1 or 2 last year, about teachers who registered and then left the district. If you don't cancel those, we don't know, and so we have to bill you for them. And so just be aware that if you have teachers that leave sometime before the conference happens, then and they've registered for a conference, you'll want to cancel that prior to the beginning of June.
Or you can substitute another teacher.
Or you could,
that's
right. Or you could substitute the teacher if you have somebody coming in and you would just tell us that they're not registered anymore, it's this person. You could substitute.
Can we show them where the link for registration for summer conference and registration is? And the deadlines for early bird registration and all of that are on the website.
Yeah. I don't think you put it on there.
No, I didn't. Well, we can still do it though. We can show you. So on our department, Shannon has now made it on the home page. There's a tab. This 4th tab over is summer conference tab. And so a lot of your summer conference stuff is just right on the home page with the different conferences. The conference detail page is here, but for example, right under that probably will be the registration link. As soon as the specialists this next week have to approve their registration links. So it'll be coming up there in the next couple weeks and you'll see it. But they won't be active until that April 1st date. But they can look at them. One other thing that is new this year is this K-12 teaching as a profession, which is a new pathway, and they are having a one-day professional development opportunity for teachers that will be teaching that pathway to go to a summer conference on June 8th. And then most of the other conferences all take place that next week of June, that second week of June. The other thing maybe to point out is that there's not a specific college and career awareness conference this year. It'll be incorporated into several different conferences. And the other thing to maybe be aware of is that work-based learning doesn't have their own standalone conference this year. Also, just today, this was messaged out to the work-based learning coordinators that they will have the opportunity to attend either the Western Pathways Conference, which will be May 30th through June 1st in Salt Lake City this year, or they can also attend any of the other CTE summer conferences. Travis does have a limited number of scholarship opportunities for summer conference for work-based learning coordinators, and they would need to email Tracy Silcott the scholarship opportunity information.
Can I point out one other? Because this is different this year.
Oh, yeah.
On that second week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we're going to have technology and engineering, IT, business and marketing, and skilled and technical sciences are all going to be that week at Skyridge High School. So a lot of your teachers who teach business and marketing and IT, they'll be able to attend both at the same school. I know they've combined the last couple of years, but we also have skilled and technical sciences teachers that teach some IT classes and some business classes. And so this year they're kind of combined. And if you look at the detail sheet on those, I know skilled and technical sciences, can you bring that up real quick, Andrea, the detail sheet?
Just like the detail
page? It shows the layout. So Tuesday is tech and engineering only. And all of these are 2-day, but your teachers can choose to go more than 2 days. Tech and engineering will be Tuesday, Wednesday. IT will be Wednesday, Thursday. Business and marketing, skilled and technical sciences will be Thursday, Friday. So if your teachers want to go 3 days, they can go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and go to all those different areas. Because we do have a lot of overlap in some areas. So that's kind of new this year. So I wanted you guys to be aware. If they come and say, I want to go 3 days, don't tell them they're crazy. They can do that. But then your registration might be a little different than it's been in the past.
And again, that's up to your CTE director, right? So the teacher can always go on their own time, but if you're reimbursing them and you have some, and maybe directors don't want them to go to all of that, that's a director decision. They get to make that decision on what they'll actually reimburse teachers for. And any of you who have worked in multiple districts will know that directors are not the same, and districts are not the same. And some districts have more funds than others. That's one piece. And some districts really focus on PD, and that's a priority for them versus some of the other things. And so it is completely different. It is a local decision on how teachers are reimbursed, or if they're reimbursed to attend summer conference.
Wendy, can you just go over just that again real quick? They said they couldn't hear. Just that tech and engineering and skilled and technical. I don't think they could hear me.
Oh, well, maybe you should move that one over there.
Do you want to come and explain it since you're helping support that, Tracy, one more time?
Just move that.
I'll just talk right here. So for those of you who didn't hear, this year, tech and engineering, IT, business and marketing, and skilled and technical sciences are all having conferences at Skyridge High School the same week. And so there's going to be a lot of overlap. And so you may have teachers. We've had business and marketing, IT of overlap conferences for the last couple of years. And this year we've added skilled and technical sciences and tech and engineering because there is some overlap on some of the teachers. So if the CTE director allows, they can choose to go more than 2 days. So they'll have to work it out with their CTE director. But if you're getting registrations, you might have some who are wanting to register for 3 days.
Or 4 potentially.
Or 4.
They can go for 2 weeks straight.
Yeah.
We don't care. It's completely up to you guys.
Is there any other questions about summer conference or any other professional development that comes through our office?
Okay.
Okay, you ready you want to drive?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I'm going to stop my sharing and Wendy's going to share her computer. Should be good.
Oh, that's why I was projecting in the other room. Right? No.
No.
Okay.
You got 76?
Sure, no code.
There we go. All right. So the topics that I have on the list could go till tomorrow, just so you guys all know. So what I'm going to have you first do is write down a couple of important dates. And so September, and I don't have the actual date set, but it's usually the end of September, there is a CTE Director Financial Training. So I know there are a number of questions about funding and how funding is calculated and what the requirements are for funding. We do a really great, fun time all day long financing. So really we go from like 8 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon, all funding, both federal and state. So I would encourage you to, and directors who have been directors for a long time don't always go to that training. They're always invited. So you guys are also invited. I don't have a problem with you attending. So I think your questions around funding, we're going to cover some of it, but there's no way I can give you the in-depth information that you may really want between now and when you're ready to leave today. And so I would encourage you to work with your director and maybe come to that training in September. And we also do one specifically around Perkins data. There were some questions about Perkins and Perkins data. We do that training in January. Lucky for you, we video that training. So it is available currently, and you can watch this most recent year's training that we just did in January. It's about an hour and a half long, and we do that training every January on Perkins data. Anytime if you ever have specific questions about your local data, you're always welcome to contact myself or Jeff McDonald. Jeff McDonald is our data steward, and he oversees that data collection and tabulation, and he and I work closely together to get you guys the reports and things, and I'll show you some of those things today. But most of the questions around Perkins and around state funding and just sort of and pathways, program approval, a lot of that starts with the data gateway. And some people had questions about PADI. Those of you who've been in your position for a few years still remember PADI as a system that you would go into and you would make changes to your data and make sure everything was updated and matched your roles and everything was just perfect, so we could then look at it and review it prior to creating your funding allocation for the following year. So what we were finding with PADI is that PADI is not accurate. So what we're finding is that what's in your data system comes in through your data system, may or may not be accurate, right? And then when it gets into PADI, it still may look a little bit different. So we're trying, and then you guys were going in and making changes into the system, and then we were using that system to fund you off of. And then with federal dollars, we were using UTREX to create federal reports that, by the way, didn't match PADI because you'd changed it. And so what we were finding is all of this work that was happening really wasn't being beneficial in any way. And it was a lot of time and a lot of effort. The only benefit came from you feeling like the data that we got in PADI was at least close to being right for funding, for state dollars. But anytime we start looking at what's happening in the Utrecht system and what's happening in Patty, they're not the same. They were not the same. And then there are some concerns with Patty being really old and nobody supporting the programming language it was written in anymore. And it just isn't user friendly for those of you who have used it. What I would tell you is Patty is still on the server. It's turned on and you can access it. You can log in, you can pull reports. You do not have the ability to change anything. So there's no editing rights currently. So the reports that I see, you can also see. You still have access to all of those, and you can still get logins and accounts to use that until we completely move it off the server and turn it off. Hopefully that process will happen in the next, between now and the fall. But I'm working on a process right now with our IT staff to get a contracted person to come in and write some more reports for the data gateway so that you all can see the information that you would like to see before we actually turn off Patty. So I'm going to start with the data gateway. And the data gateway is where you're going to go in and you find your CTE survey, which I think Laura talked about. It's also where you're going to find, so I'm already logged in. If you can see that, if you do not have an account, your LEA, you have somebody who oversees the data gateway, someone. It's not usually your CTE director, but somebody oversees the data gateway. Between you and your CTE director, you both should probably have access to this, or at least your director should have access to this. And so you'll want to get with that person to have access, and what you need access to are the CTE tools. And we have CTE data quality, and we have the CTE program approval survey. The survey is what Laura talked about. The data quality is the piece that I'm going to talk about. So it looks really simple, right? But we're going to develop this in to have multiple reports available to you. But currently there's only a couple things in here, but they are important. So I know, who are the directors that we have out there? Anybody out there?
Jim Stocks was the only one that was on.
Is he still on? And Gary Wall?
Yeah.
Are either of them, Gary or Jim, are you still out there? And would you let me know if it's okay if I pull up your records?
Gary's still there. And Jim's still there.
Now the test will be to see if they're listening. See if we've bored them yet. I'm sure they are. Are either of them giving me the thumbs up to go forward? No? There's no student data in here as far as like student names, so it doesn't really matter. I just thought I would ask one of them before picking on them.
Go ahead, pick on them.
I'll pick on one. Who have we been picking on the most?
Gary, I'm just gonna text him and.
You're gonna text
tell
him?
He's not listening.
Oh, okay. So you want me to pull up Provo? All right. So we'll pull up Provo. So this is this is an attempt to move away from Patty and to give you some of the same information. So what this is in here you can see, and I'll maybe zoom up a little bit so you can actually see a little better. It gives us a lot of information. It gives us your district. It tells us when we last received Utrecht's data from you. So if you log in and you pull up your CTE data quality and you don't see this date being anytime recent, then your system isn't sending data into Utrecht's on a regular basis. And so that would be something you would want to be aware of, because really every district is supposed to be submitting their data daily or nightly. And so you should be able to see, and it looks like Provo's right on top of it. Their last poll, which I've pulled from the system, happened on that's today at 3 a.m., 3:50 a.m. So that's the last time they updated. So any changes that happened today during the day are not reflected in here. You won't see those changes until the following day. But what it does is it gives you some common errors. These are errors that would potentially affect funding for state dollars. And so when you see those errors, it's to help, these errors are to help you identify what's happening with your data so that you can make those corrections prior to the end of June. So if you can get all of these things fixed prior to the end of June and don't have any errors, or you have like one or two that you just can't do anything about, then for the most part, all of your teacher student record or teacher records will come into the funding formula.
Did you say June 1st?
It's actually the end of June.
Okay.
Yeah. So Cactus always closes out the end of June. Data always closes out the end of July. We take a snapshot of Cactus right as it's getting ready to close and compare that with your data. So that's why we always say right at the end of June, make sure they're correct, because when closeout happens, you never know if your changes actually get into the final upload. Okay. So we usually recommend the end of June, and they say June 30th, I say June 28th, because it's like the last day that they close. They usually close and roll over Cactus at like 11 o'clock in the morning. So you don't even really have a full day. And so you plan a day or two ahead just to be safe, to make sure your data has been pushed into the system. To give you an example, this says the person's CTE assignment code doesn't exist in Cactus for school year 18-19. So this is a list of, and it may be one person that teaches multiple things. Okay, so it gives you the Cactus ID. We're going to work on changing this report so it actually gives you the teacher name. But right now, we're not making a lot of changes to this report until we can get somebody in to get all of the reports going. So it tells you what the school year is. It tells you your LEA, which is important for you to know, because if you're seeing numbers that are not your LEA, that would be a big red flag, right? And then it would say your school, the Cactus ID, and the section that you've reported for that record. So if it's period 1, it'll have a certain section number. If it's period 2, a different section number. And it'll tell you which semester. What I will say on this semester, the semester isn't always accurate for whatever reason. And so like, for example, semester 5, nobody's really in semester 5. That probably is that it is a full year class. Well, no, that shouldn't be a full year class. That should be a semester class. So semester don't pay close attention to when you're starting to look at these records. But what it means is for this teacher, they're teaching adult roles in period 6, it looks like. This is their core code that they've had. This is the where taught district and the where taught school. So where taught matters, because if you have one that says college and it's taught by UVU or USU or Salt Lake Community College, the where taught district should not say Provo, right? So if Provo's using UVU, it'll be reported by Provo. It won't be taught by Provo. It would be taught by, and there is a code in the system for all of the colleges, and you would use that code. So within that, you can see this, and so what it means is this teacher, 13-8-36, for whatever reason, they have, within Cactus, they have not been assigned that core code. So when you go into Cactus and you look at their assignments, that core code does not exist in their assignments. That's what this error means. That means whoever has them in Cactus hasn't assigned them that class to teach. It's not listed as a percentage of their load. Okay? So there is one about being qualified. The taught district and school combination are not in the school days table. That is for us, if you have a new school, or for example, this is maybe a home, maybe some of your homebound schools, you have different school codes where somebody's teaching. They're not in our school days table because they don't really have an approved CTE program. So only if you have an approved CTE program will your school code be actually in the school days table for us to calculate off of. So this person does not have a CTE assignment. Again, this person is teaching a CTE class but has no CTE assignments in Cactus. And then this is a combination report of the school for the school days table. So the school days table, and I put in this folder for you some links. So I'm going back to the OneDrive real quick. The school days table that is the skill cert data. Here we go. So the minimum program approval that Laura talked about comes to this table. And so this is how a school gets minimum approval. So if you look at row 1, in order for a school to be approved for a state CTE program, and I say state because federal has some additional requirements, you have to have at least 1 CTSO, 2 areas of study, 6 courses, and 1 pathway offered each year. So if you ever have a school that drops below that, that school would not be qualified to earn CTE funding. And that means it has to be offered on your campus, like yours. It's not that those 6 courses are offered through UVU, for example, if you're Provo district, right? If they open a school and all of their courses are taught through UVU that are CTE, they don't qualify for those, for funding. You do have to have it taught on your school campus and go through the program approval process to be approved for state funding. And what we do is we then use, go back to whichever tab we're going to be on. We use this information here. And so I'm going to pull up the valid records for Provo. There's a little X right here. And that actually is a spreadsheet that will open up for you and show you some additional information. So we take a look at all the core codes that are offered. We take a look at all of the membership hours. And we look at, so you can see, I can see a lot of information here about each course section. So we take all of this information and I use that information to tabulate whether or not each school meets the minimum requirements. If you don't meet those minimum requirements, then we have to have a conversation about the fact that you've in jeopardy of losing funding, right? So if you've been on the approval and you've been approved, generally you would receive a letter or a call from me about getting those things corrected during the current year. If you're brand new, then you can't be approved until that actually comes into fruition, right? You have to actually offer them. So core code, you can see here, and this is one of the things that you can probably help with. This is those of you who are used to PADI. Here you go. Where taught school district, where taught school, and you also have the reporting school and district. You have the teacher's cactus code, the course description, and you also have membership. And this is where most of you were going into PADI and you were looking at the enrollment and you were looking at the membership and you were seeing differences than what was actually on your rolls. So what I would say to you is now go in and pull up this report, look at your enrollment, look at your membership hours, and then you would be able to tell if it's being reported correctly. So there's no changes happening to this. This report just now was pulled directly from Utrex when I clicked it and opened it. So as soon as we validate, and I'll go back to that tab, as soon as I hit, if I were to hit revalidate, then it would update those spreadsheets. So tomorrow, when there's more information for Provo, if something were to have changed and I open this spreadsheet, that spreadsheet will be updated. Okay. So when you go into this spreadsheet, you can see all of the information that I can see. And you can see, for example, so
Wendy,
yeah.
Ruth Ann is asking, so we would match Utrex data to our membership roles.
Yeah. Yeah, so when a student takes roll in, or a teacher, thanks. A teacher takes roll and it goes into your SIS system. That SIS system then reports back into Utrex on a nightly basis. So what you're not seeing is how many days absent somebody was, but you're seeing how many membership hours your school is reporting for those 35 or 36 students. So you can see here's 2 separate sections. They both have 36 students. They both have different membership numbers. The first 2 rows up there, 1363 and 1301. So you can see that even though there's the same number of students, there's different membership hours. And what that probably means is that if you were to go back to the roll, you probably had a student check in or out prior to the class starting, like checking out during class and not finishing the class, or they checked in late, or you had a 10-day drop student. Okay, so there's lots of reasons why that number would be different. But what you don't want to see is zeros in that enrollment column or zeros in the membership column. Or you don't want to see that there's 2,600 or 726 students, right? Because then your membership's being doubled. So this will tell you what is actually being reported.
What would be the purpose of wanting to get into Patty?
So Patty has some of the calculations. That's the difference. So it gives you an ADM tab total, and you can look at a 5-year history, and it shows you where you've been for the last 5 years. My goal is to get those reports in for you into the data gateway. That's what I'm trying to do, is get that information into the data gateway so you never have a reason to log into Patty. And I don't ever use it again. That'd be my preference. So this report is important for you to see, I would say. Of all the reports in the data gateway, this one's important, as well as those errors. And helping and some of you may be assigned to help your CTE director go through this process of making sure these are correct. I know Provo has a brand new CTE director. You have an interim director now. So this is something that I would say, looking at your list, you probably want to get fixed before the end of the year. So your invalid records are all of those records that are tied to these errors. So these errors right here are tied to these 241 invalid records. So what I would say in this case would be that Provo, let's say they don't do anything about it, at the end of the year, 241 records will not be calculated into their funding formula. And a record is an individual period. So it could be a year-long class, could be a semester class. Okay? So a teacher who maybe has maybe one teacher has an error, but they have errors on 6 out of their 8 sections. That teacher is going to generate 6 errors. So that even though this number seems high, it may be a handful of teachers that just need to be corrected. Okay.
We have another question. From Lisa Hilton. When is the final ADM membership report posted in Patty?
Final. So basically after the data closes and I go through and double check things, usually by September I have your ADM number, and that's why your funding formulas generally are published in September. We do membership monitoring between September and December generally. Any changes would happen during that time frame, and then now, this time of year, is when you would probably get a final for the year. So what happens if we do membership audits and we find that rolls or somehow the system didn't report correctly, then we would have to make a change to that number. That number would then impact your funding during the current year.
Thank you.
Yep. So all your directors are waiting for their final budget right now for the current year we're in. Any other questions on that? Does that help with your questions? Okay. So that's Data Gateway. Then I showed you the WPUs. One thing that you need to understand about these is you can always go up and down annually depending on what happens in your school. Yeah, and it's by school site. So if you have 3 sites and it's only grades 9 through 12, so middle schools who don't have 9th grade don't count. You may go to 15 one year, and let's say a teacher leaves, the program can't be offered because you haven't found a replacement. You may go down, right? What you can't do and what you would never want to do is go below the 10 WPU, which is the minimum requirement. We also have advisors who don't always remember, for whatever reason, to register their CTSOs. So let's say you have a school that only has one CTSO and they don't turn in their membership. Then you're in jeopardy of losing all of your funding because you've not met the minimum requirement. If you have 4 or 5, right, CTSOs and one doesn't, that doesn't really put you in jeopardy of losing all of your funding because the max for CTSOs that we look at is 3. So meaning up to 3 can move you up or down the scale here on the table. So areas of study as well, if you have teachers who move or if you change classes, just be aware that that can also impact this funding. So that funding comes on top of the membership hours. So a kid taking a class generates a membership hour, which is what we just looked at. That information and those numbers create funding in addition to these 10, 15, 20, 25 WPUs. So they're not the same pot of funds. I mean, they are the same pot of funds, but they're not generated in the same way. So every hour that a student spends in class, or every day that a student spends in class, generates funds. By having these things in place that are on this table, you also generate funds. And those two combined go into a funding formula that goes to your district. And I'll show you where those tables are so you can see them. And so the district gets these in addition, and you can see by having at least a half-time CTE director, your district will get 20 WPUs, in addition to whatever classes students are taking. The only time an LEA receives 25 WPUs is if they have a consortium. So if you have a CTE director who oversees multiple districts, then there would be 25 WPUs awarded instead of just 20. And that usually requires a full-time CTE director. So you have one person that's full-time that oversees multiple districts. And so we award an additional 5 WPUs to help with that oversight.
So Wendy, Lisa Hilton has another question on this. What is the difference between areas of study and pathways?
So currently areas of study are calculated based off of having agriculture courses, FACS courses, business IT courses. Right now, that's what that is. In the future, as we roll out these changes, we may go to something more around clusters, but that would require us to do a board rule change. So this table is actually a link for you within the within here. I also created a link for you to go to the funding section of our website. With the funding section of our website, there is a section for federal and state. So since we're talking about state, I'm going to pull up state first. State funding is here. We've got the explanation around what add-on funds are. We have some information about each of the programs. We also have some definitions. We always post multiple years of the ongoing allocation, and that's the big spreadsheet that your directors receive. And so I will pull that up really quick. This is the table where we calculate those numbers. So what you'll see here, and I'll pull this up nice and, whoa, maybe, there we go, large here for you. Since we were looking at Provo, I'm going to put them, come on, Provo, where are you? There you are. So they're at the bottom right now of the table. And so you can see these columns here, columns 1 through 6, are those combination of what you saw on the table and the hours that the students spend in the classroom. So that's why your core codes matter. That's why your course titles matter. That's why attendance matters. That's why all of those things matter. And we also look at that to see if you're offering the pathways that you say you're offering. So columns 1 through 6 are just about 75% of a total budget. Then you have columns for Summer agriculture, which generates 5 WPUs per program, and that is awarded out to the LEA. Comprehensive guidance and counseling, which is a separate program. By the way, is not a CTE program, but is a program in and of itself. And it is just awarded to us from the legislature in the same pot of funds. And so when we get that money, we have to allocate out 10.5% of the total budget goes to comprehensive guidance and counseling off of the total pot of funds. And so that budget is the budget that you have for comprehensive guidance and counseling that's awarded to your district. Work-based learning is an application process. It is also awarded to you individually. College and Career Awareness, that's your 7th grade program course. This is the funds that are made available to your LEA for that class to help pay for some of those additional expenditures. The important thing to understand about College and Career Awareness, Work-Based Learning, and Comp Guidance is that additional expenditures cannot come out of columns 1 through 6. So even though it costs more to run those programs than what you're awarded, you can't spend additional funds for those programs out of the money you generate in columns 1 through 6, summer agriculture, CTSOs, or competency. Those are all 9 through 12 programs. College and Career Awareness is a 7th grade program. Work-Based Learning is a K-12 program, and Comp Guidance is a 7 through 12 program. So that's why those three programs, and because they're not just CTE programs, the funds can't be mixed.
Wendy, Lisa needed a little more clarification on the difference between program areas and pathways. I don't think she understood that the program areas is business and marketing, IT, and the pathways are those courses that a student can take in those areas.
So Lisa's asking for more clarification on the difference between a program area and a pathway. So a pathway is a sequence of courses, meaning a student will take multiple courses within a pathway leading to a specific career. A program area is an area where we classify courses. But they may not even be in the same pathway. So we might have a bunch of agriculture courses in agriculture, but there may be agriculture courses and business courses in a pathway. And so a program area is just a way that we sort of group our courses, all courses within a certain area, but they're not sequential for a pathway for a student to take. So I hope that helps. And they're not necessarily grouped by a cluster that way either. Okay, so this spreadsheet's always available. It is public information. If you're teachers, if you're director, anybody who wants access to know what your district's earning for CTE programs, this is public information, and that's why it is posted on the website. And anytime I do an update to the budget, I update the website with this document. So you can always go to it and refer to it. We have last year's information and FY16. So we usually try and keep about 3 years up for people to look at. We have each of those broken out. So those columns that I showed you that were all specific programs that were pulled out, each have an individual budget. And those budgets are available and published as well so that you can look at the detail. If you want to know exactly how much you earn for comp guidance by school, you can see that in the comp guidance report. If you want to see exactly how much you earn for college and career awareness or summer agriculture, you can see that as well. And those budgets are all found within the fiscal year that they're tied to. Okay, so I'm trying to think of other funding questions, but any questions about state funding before I move quickly on to federal, because I'm looking at your time.
Yeah, keep going. Yeah.
So any questions on state funding? Okay. No, Tracy? Okay. So federal funding. Federal funding is through Carl D. Perkins. The state receives funds annually. We have to write a state plan. We have to say what we're going to do and how we're going to accomplish certain things. we are the agency that oversees that grant, and we split that with higher ed. So when you look at federal funding, you can see our state plan. We have performance measurements, which each LEA also has. Each of your districts have performance measurements, and I'll also show you some of those. You have to, and each year your district, in order to participate, has to submit an application. This is not something just flows through automatically. It is also something that you can choose not to accept. We have some districts that earn so little funding that they say, no, we don't want it. Don't give it to us, because there's more restrictive rules about how it can be spent. And so they don't want the funds. And so you can, as a district, choose to participate in this or not. So I thought I had, there's the state plan, 5-year, oh, we're all the way at the bottom on this one. So I'll pull up for you so you can see the federal budget. So we get about $12 million, looks like almost 13 this year. And this is how we break it out. So there's about 5% of the grant that stays in our office to help with the administration. So we use this money to help pay for our Jeff McDonald's of the world in our office that tabulate data all day long for Perkins. And we use this money to help pay for myself, that I oversee I oversee the budgets and the plan and the reporting process. And we have a couple other things that we use that money for, but it's about 5% of the total grant. The state leadership portion is money that goes to non-traditional training and corrections training, and then leadership. So that leadership category is some of the money we use to pay for summer conference expenses. We also use that money to help with standards rewrites. We also use that money to help with other grants. Sometimes we have LEAs that want to do some grants that are not really tied to their plan, but are maybe some research grants or some special projects grants that they can ask us for funds for, that we can use if we have those funds still available. And then we have formula, and the formula is what rolls out to the LEAs and to higher ed. So 60% of it goes out to secondary, and 40% goes to post-secondary. And so the other portion is reserve. And those reserve funds are funds that we use to help fund your region consortiums where you have a pathway coordinator. We pay $50,000 to each region to help pay for a pathway coordinator in that region to help support the districts with pathway initiatives and trainings. And so that goes out to the region, and the region uses that. Additionally, we have the last couple of years been giving out special project grants for new and innovative grants that the districts can apply for to do some things that are maybe new and innovative within their region or district. And we award those out separate from their formula, and it's available to both secondary and post-secondary institutions. Secondary, and so then the rest is all formula. So for secondary, that's based off of students who are, and I can pull that up for you here. If you look at the secondary allocation, this is how you are calculated. So ages 5 to 17, we pulled census data. Those students, 70% of students who are in poverty. So 70% of your formula is based off how many students between the ages of 5 and 17 are in poverty within your district. The other 30% comes from just the total number of students, ages 5 to 17. So Perkins is really a federal program that is supposed to help disadvantaged populations earn and get skills and knowledge to improve their situation in the workforce and into college. So for secondary, this is how it's calculated. And so every year, those are broken out for you, and you can see how much you get. The colors, what the colors mean is that we have some consortiums. Because if you remember, I said there's certain requirements for federal. You have to have an approved program, but you also have to generate $15,000 worth of funds in order to get funds. And so what you can see is anything that's in like the peachy tan color is LEAs that did not meet the minimum threshold, and so they formed a consortium to receive funds and utilize funds. I did give last year a waiver, and so I am able to give waivers if there's an LEA that I feel like really can't form a consortium or is really close to that threshold, and I felt like probably within the next year or so would be within the threshold to earn the 15,000 minimum requirement. But it really is not, it doesn't happen always, and most likely these two LEAs, and the reason they received a waiver was because they already had a consortium of two LEAs and they still didn't meet it. And so they later will probably add an additional LEA to their consortium for this next year. All right, so that's how we break it out. We also have reporting. And so when you look at, pull this up here. So these are our performance measures, and it's a lot of stuff to read that's not super fun. But every year, the January training that I told you about around Perkins is to look at your data. So when you guys submit information, so if you go back to the data gateway, thinking about the data gateway and that information you submit, we use that information to see how students are doing. So we take the information of what courses they're taking, even though you see the teacher level, we receive the student level information, and we see what a student is taking, whether a student earned credit, whether a student did well on their language arts or math assessments. So currently we're using SAGE. So SAGE results actually matter to CTE, which is a surprise for some people that aren't very familiar with CTE, and for some people who think they're pretty familiar with CTE, they're kind of surprised, and it really does matter. We look at your seniors who graduate and have whether or not they've completed a pathway or concentrated in a pathway, and we actually look at their results, and we look to see how well they did compared to their peers within that given time frame. And what we're finding is the at a glance document, you can see the graduation rates is just 1 point. Students who concentrate and complete CTE pathways are much more likely to complete and graduate from high school. What we're also seeing is, and I was going to pull one up for you, but I don't think they're broken out here. We have I must not have it here. So we have a table that's made for each LEA that has different colors on it. Breaks it out by ethnicity, special populations, for each of those areas that we look at for Perkins. And what we're finding is that students who are ELL students, students who are minority students, students who are intergenerational poverty students are doing much better than their peers, almost 20% higher than their peer group in all areas if they're involved in CTE programs. And so there's about more of a 10% difference in the total population, but when you start breaking it out by special populations, we're seeing larger increases in achievement levels for those students completing in CTE programs. And so those tables can be pretty helpful for you. We can add the state results so they can look at that to the drop down. Carrie, you know where those are, don't you? The state results, they're in SharePoint.
Yep, and I can add them.
Yeah, you can just grab them. Just the state results, not the individual LEA.
I'll check it by you.
Yeah, okay. So those are published every year, and they're published in January. Your directors get a copy of that. It is interesting information, and it probably should be looked at. It kind of helps you. It's supposed to help your directors create their plan for the next year of how they're going to spend their Perkins money and how they're going to help address some of achievement gaps and some of those things that we're trying to achieve with Perkins. And there's a whole list of all kinds of rules about spending for Perkins. There's books. I mean, I could give you way too much information and you don't need it. Or I mean, you don't really need it now. So I don't know what else was on my list. Was that it?
Done.
I'm
Yeah.
done.
No,
Good.
you're going to show us where we can find the pathway documents that
Oh, yeah,
we
yeah.
can pull up on the website.
The pathway documents. I am going to show you those. Let's go back.
Hang in there, everybody. We're almost done, and your
I
Friday
know.
will be coming.
I felt bad when I saw that Andrea put me last on the agenda. I was afraid you guys were going to sleep. I really did.
Funding is complicated, but having like a general overview is helpful, I think. Because in the end, that's what people really want. We just want our money so we can do our job.
So tell them why they're not getting it.
Yeah.
Now you know.
At least you have some idea, yeah. So the career pathways in Utah. So when you come up here, yeah, I noticed these links aren't all the way up yet, probably when it's refreshed. But when I come here, these ones are listed, but here, oh, look, she's working. She must be working on it today, right now. This, I don't find one that's not. Let's see. Oh, goodness, she's gone through a bunch. I'm just going to pull them all up. See, they're there.
So that lists all of them?
Not all of them. You have to go by section right now.
Section. I'd imagine the complete one.
The complete one will be up here shortly. That you just pull up through the charts and the list. But right now you can go by section, and it looks like she's breaking them out for you. But then there's also one where you can download all of them from each program area that we've added them to.
Thank you.
Or each cluster, I'm sorry. I said that wrong.
Thank
Yeah?
You. Yep.
Okay, well, if you ever have questions, you're welcome to contact me. I'm done. I am done.
Okay. We're going to turn some quick time over to last two items really quick over to Carrie Pack.
Will you drive again?
I'm going to turn it off just a second.
Or do you want to drive?
No, I just shut down my computer.
Yeah. This is the cruddy loaner computer, though, that's not working good.
This will be super easy.
Or just maybe talk to him about it.
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Okay.
I'll move.
So, oh, you're fine. I'm going to go over here off camera, hopefully. So I'm the newest one here, and so I got this job where I'm going to talk about some other resources we have for you. First of all, I have to tell you guys, I bleed CTE. Like when I got here and they said I was going to support Wendy, I thought, oh, they're going to put me with numbers. I worked in industry for 17 years doing creative things. I'm not good with numbers at all. I tricked Wendy when she interviewed me. But when I see those numbers, those are students. Those are students that are going to make it if they have those numbers. And so that means something to me. I graduated from an alternative high school. I got my first skill certification from the DATC. Go Davis County, you know. And I went to work. And from there, I went on and got my degree in post-secondary education after I was working. But I wouldn't have ever made it without CTE. So it's a big deal to me. And when we talk about these things, and they're not fun, and these checklists and everything else, all I see are the kids I pass on the street that are troublemakers usually, having a chance. And like getting to do everything cool I got to do. I got to do some really cool things in my life. You know, I traveled all over the world. I had a great career, and now I get to work at CTE. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. Some of the changes we've done here lately have been, I think they were headed this way anyways, but I'm pretty stubborn. So some of the changes you've probably noticed lately is we've tried to go without a lot of paper. There's a lot of reasons for this. And one of the biggest hiccups we first did, if you'll just pull up the OneDrive for me, you have probably all heard of SharePoint. That was my brainchild. Yep, I'm going to hide afterwards because it's upset a lot of people. They were used to getting paper and reports and being able to submit paper and support. And this is an all online thing. Now, SharePoint is hard, and it has been hard for a lot of people, but the stuff we're putting back and forth is secure data. It's not something you can fax us, and it's not something that we didn't need to verify who was putting it in the system, put it in the system, and when they did it. So hopefully that is all smoothed out. But even for meetings like this, You've noticed we didn't print out all these handouts. They're on the OneDrive, and we were able to put that in a link, and those OneDrive won't go away. So as you go back to your schools and offices, that will still be there. That link will work, and all those handouts will be there. And if you forgot something or anything like that, it would be there all the time.
I can't get in.
Okay, well, pretend you can see it here. The other thing that is in that OneDrive under other programs, I think they put this in for me too, but just in case you guys feel like they speak a foreign language here, I did. I didn't come from education, and all those acronyms
I can get to
mean nothing to me. Still, I've been here a while, and I still do not understand the difference between you, she, you, acty. I don't even remember all of them. So Andrea made a cheat sheet. And I don't think that's published anywhere, and I don't think
it's in the OneDrive.
Right, until now. I don't think anyone else realizes that, this education system's awesome. People stay a really long time, and so you just kind of inherit them. And for someone that came from industry, I didn't know any of them, and I can't keep any of them straight at all. So that was a big deal. So that is in your other programs folder in that OneDrive. You'll find a list that says acronyms. It says ed acronyms, actually, and it's all the ones they've said today and probably some more. If you guys hear other ones, send them to me, because it's crazy. It really is crazy. The other thing they wanted me to ask about or talk about was Adobe. And here's why. Again, going paperless. We have started doing almost everything in a fillable form. And that includes electronic signatures. I have gotten forms back from people that they have printed out the fillable form and handwritten it in and then sent it back to me. And I'm like, okay, that didn't help me. So then they'll do it. They'll fill out the form online, which is awesome, but then it asks for a signature. So they'll print it out and sign it. Adobe is awesome. And when they talked about industry certifications, one of those is Adobe, So an electronic signature is recognized and legal. They don't have to print out the document. If you have an electronic signature, you can put it in there. A lot of times, if it's not a real legal document, you can just type your name in.
Can you explain the difference, just so people know the difference between typing your name in and an official electronic signature?
Sure. So we get, in the state, being education, I hope everybody has Adobe DC. If you don't have access to that, please get access to that. It's something that, yes, it costs a little bit of money, but a fraction of what the public pays for
Leah
it.
said if you guys don't have it, it's a legitimate ask for your CTE director that you get that software.
And Adobe is offering a discount. They offer a discount to the LEAs in the state on Adobe products, so they don't really have a reason not to get it for you.
Yeah, so you should be able to edit forms, make your own. I mean, I would encourage you all to go paperless, really. And if you ever want to know how to do that or want to know, easy, free ways to learn how to do those things, Adobe has great online resources, and I can link you to any of that. An electronic signature nowadays is legal. It is the same as taking a black pen, you remember the day when you couldn't use blue, and signing a document, because what Adobe does is it has you sign with your finger, and then it saves it. And every time you're asked to sign a document, and you are on your computer logged in as you, and you click that you're going to sign that, it throws that electronic signature in there, and that is legal. That can be used on legal forms. Now, if you don't have that, or somebody hasn't set it up, or it's not a legal document, you can type your name in, and we've all done that before too, where doctor's offices agree to the HIPAA or whatever. You can just type your name in too. Either of those work, and so you're going to see a lot more forms coming from us. For sub reimbursements, all of those things where we're just going to ask you to fill them out and send them back to us rather than print them out. Yep, endorsements will go that way. We're going to go as little paper as possible. And let's be honest, admins do most of the, work. So it's going to be you guys helping me drive that. That's my real passion, is that we're going to just get rid of the paper. So not only is it more secure, it's cheaper and better for the environment. So That is the big push. The other thing I wanted to mention is they talked about Midas. I tend to tackle projects here that make my phone ring. And so when I first got here, Midas made my phone ring all the time. Recently, if anyone does use Midas, you've seen that the transcripts finally from On Track are up to date. And
Not completely, but they're better.
Most of the way. They're way better. And if there's stuff missing, we can fix that for you. I would encourage you, if you are doing PD or you want to do those things and you don't know how to do it, and you don't know how to look up transcripts for people or see if things are accurate, call me, because I made that my baby. And I went all over this building and drove everybody crazy until I understood it. So if you need help with Midas, go ahead and call me. You can call the CTE office. We usually answer. Me or Andrea answer the line if you ask for CTE. So you'll get me. And that is just another great way to go paperless and not have to keep track of all those roles and all those things. I think that's all I had. Was there anything else you wanted me to cover? I'm really glad she didn't pull up that document because I can't even say half of those acronyms.
I'll just stay right here so I don't have to be.
No, you can be right here. Yes, I want you to be right there.
I just wanted to say thank you all for coming and attending on WebEx. We're really excited and we hope this was informative for you. I also wanted to tell you, which I should have said earlier, I'm a product of CTE. So CTE is like my whole life. I was in high school. I attended CTE classes. I was in a work-based learning program. I worked for a veterinarian, and I was a veterinary technician for 25 years because of CTE. And so when I started working at the state office, I've been here 5 years now, I feel like I've come full circle. And now I'm really helping to promote those programs at the state level that benefited me for my whole life, pretty much.
Oh, the other thing we should mention is we talked about those certificates. In the IT field, you can't get a degree in programming languages, meaning you can't get a degree in Python or Linux, or those degrees don't exist. When they look at an application, they are looking for those certifications. So those are a big deal to be able to list those. You know, make sure those kids list those out because IT is where it's going to be, and it's not a 4-year degree any longer. It really is those certifications.
I have a question. So, like with the Code to Success, that they're doing a 9-week program in Bottega, so they're sponsoring that one, but they're offering 3 extra weeks to do like 12 weeks so that they can, the kids who do decide to go to 12 weeks can graduate with the level 1 certification.
Correct.
Can they use that through the school?
I don't know about through the school. Let's talk to Brandon. Brandon is the education specialist. I support him, so I will follow up and get you an answer. Okay. But that is the stuff that goes on resumes. That's the stuff that gets people hired. So.
And most of those decisions are at the school or the LEA level.
Oh, okay.
A lot of that is not decided in this office.
Okay.
So.
There's a really quick, only 4-question survey that we'd love to have you do online, and just let us know what we can help you with, what you learned, what you're going to take away from this, and what. Since it's our first time, we really want your feedback.
Yeah,
so if we do this again, if we do it next year, I don't know what if it was helpful in any way, we'd really like to know. And we so appreciate again your time, and on a Friday afternoon is a long kind of boring meeting on a Friday afternoon. And so thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for being the leaders of CTE out in the field. We really, really appreciate all that you do. And please let us know if there's anything we can do to help you. Otherwise, have a good weekend. We'll see you guys soon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Carrie, do you know you want to have the Code Success for students? Do you know if they have anything similar for adults?
So they do. They do. Let me tell you.